The following podcast contains spoilers and adult language, and so many child ghouls.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. Evil is coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I am Diana.
And I'm Steve.
This episode, we're going to be discussing episode 7 of season 2 of The Walking Dead: Dead City. Title of the episode is Novi Početak, which sounds very impressive, but that's only because I watched the episode like 3 times. And the Croat says it like
you
4
speak Croatian?
No, I don't.
Oh.
But that's what's great is they gave us the translation in Wikipedia like weeks ago, but you didn't even really need it because the Croat says it like 4 times, and he's like,
oh yeah,
new day, new beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
So before we get into talking details for the episode, let's first sort of rapid fire discuss really quickly what we thought of the episode as a whole. I went first last week for episode 6, so Steve, it is your turn to go first. What did you think of Novi Početak?
I really liked it. I think for my money, it's in the running for the best episode of the season so far. It had, I mean, there were, really, really fun moments throughout the whole episode. It's directed by Michael Satrazemis, so, guys, obviously, he knows what he's doing.
He's
when
well
it comes
versed
to directing zombie
yeah.
stuff. Yes, and I think this is one of those really good examples of when you give him a good script, you can have some really, really great stuff happen. And there are still some things that were in there though that I was kind of like, really, that were still there that I think are just unavoidable, that just come into play because the person, in this case it's Eli Jordan who wrote it, just telling a story. There's going to be some moments where you're like, I don't know about this, but they were small and minor and did not distract me or detract from my enjoyment of the story. Like we were just talking about before we started, my biggest complaint, and I think this episode kind of encapsulates the whole season, is that there's still not enough of Maggie and Negan together for me, for my
I totally
taste.
agree with that.
Yeah, and it's almost like we kind of are getting 2 shows for the price of one, in that every episode it's like there's the Maggie show and then there's the Negan show, and then every once in a while one of them will guest star in the other show, but it's never really the 2 of them throughout, large chunks of it. They kind of, it's very Dwight and Sherry like of them, that they sort of bump into each other and, oh, hey, I've been looking all over for you and now I immediately have to leave, So that would kind of be my biggest complaint or my biggest nit, not just of this episode, but just of the season in general. And yet, like I said, there's so much good stuff in this one, where they, each kind of were, each had some sort of like head injury, or were like, running on like 35 hours without sleep. And, we're at that kind of twilighty, I'm about to go psychotic, moments. Right. So a lot of hallucinating and a lot of what's real and what isn't, and just a lot of fun stuff. So I overall, like I said, I really like this episode, and I think it's certainly one of the strongest ones of the season that we've seen of the 8 episodes that we're gonna get. This is certainly one of the best. So how about you? What'd you think?
I'm really glad to be back on the side of liking the episode.
Welcome back!
It's like a big warm hug, you know what I mean? So I'm really with you on this one, which is I really liked this episode. There was so much in it that I thought worked really well. Lots of really great fun stuff. There's some good emotional moments, some good drama, some good action, some good ghouls. There were some things, it's not a perfect episode. There were some things that I wasn't a fan of, but it was the first time in a bit where the things that I was like, I have questions, didn't like ruin the episode for me or didn't like take me out of it. It just made me go, let me write that down and we'll get back to that later. Because there's other stuff going on that I'm actually really enjoying. So, and we'll get to that when we get to all of our sort of points, but a lot of the things that I had like issues with were more like I have questions as opposed to like what do they think they're doing like that kind of stuff. So and I do agree with you that this is the biggest stumbling block that I think they had to come across this season was they created a season where Maggie and Negan weren't together like at all, except for like these like brief like ships passing in the night kind of shit. And so they had to build a show around these characters that work best together. And then they had them separately, and it sort of breaks that, that sort of sparkle, that energy that they bring when they're together. They had to break that apart and try and create something different for each one of them. And some stuff worked and some stuff didn't. But this was one episode where they were apart, and there were a lot of things that worked, and a lot of it was that they were both on, like you were saying, with the head injuries and the whatever. It was also like, yes, they both had like they were both under some sort of like physical issue. Negan with the head injury and Maggie with the it seemed like overtired / afraid of heights stuff happening. But part of it, too, was that there was a lot of emotion behind those two sort of physical ailments happening. So it wasn't just like, oh, I don't feel good. It's, I'm desperate to find my son. It's a huge city. This guy is leading me nowhere. I'm so tired I could fall down. I'm so afraid of heights. I'll do anything to get my son at the detriment of myself. So it's like there's all this physical stuff going on, but also there's a big emotional feeling through it. And the same thing with Negan. Negan was going through all this not feeling like he's doing the right thing and not feeling like he's good enough, all this guilt. And on top of it, he got a big crack on the head. And so he's like seeing shit. And, so the two of them together were having these like really deep and meaningful journeys, sort of like parallel to each other. And I was saying to Steve before we got started that I think it's interesting that, the show had Maggie and Negan sort of paired up with these separate groups. Maggie was with the New Babylon people, and Negan was with the Croat and the Dama and those people. And now there's been like a slight flip-flop. So you see Maggie is traveling around with the Croat, and Negan has Ginny and the historian dude with him. And it's like, so sort of seeing them interact with these people in these different circumstances. And you don't have to create new characters. You don't have to have like, this, churning out of new characters. Keep the same characters, just put them in different circumstances. And I really liked Maggie with the Croat. I think a lot of those scenes really worked because of their sort of interesting energy that was going on there, which can't really put a finger on it, but it's there. But yeah, overall, a really, really good episode. I've got some questions. I know we'll talk through them. I agree with you that I think it's in the running to be the strongest episode of the season. And yeah, I think the best part too is leading up to this, I wasn't sure how they were gonna, get to the end of the season, and now I'm really kind of anticipating the finale, which I was worried I wasn't going to be there, and I'm really glad that I am. I'm really glad that I'm not I'm not in that headspace where I'm like, oh, if this could just end already, that'd be great. I'm actually really looking forward to next week, and I'm looking forward to us chatting about it too. So that's a good thing.
Oh. Well, I think I should point out to everyone that Diana really, really liked this episode, and there was exactly 0% of Kim Coates in it.
Right, and we're supposed to get him back next week. So if they can take this week and build on it and add Kim Coates, man, it's reach for the stars, right?
There you go. Right, you got it.
All right, so that's our thoughts, like our quick thoughts, our not so quick thoughts on episode 7. So next up, we're going to get into our writer and director, and also a little bit of an episode description, and that is all you, sir. So why don't you take it away?
Well, all right. So this week's episode is being brought to you by...
We know a place where roaming through a maze of cubicle walls has given way to sleeping, where sleepless nights fighting bears yield to restful sleep. And Gulesta can help you get there, like it has for so many people before. When taking Gulesta, don't climb large numbers of stairs or attempt to step around tripwires and booby traps until you feel fully awake. Walking, crawling, or stabbing while asleep without remembering it the next day have been reported. Abnormal behaviors may include aggressiveness, agitation, hallucinations, that's actually the Negan storyline, or confusion. In depressed single-parent patients, the desire to send weird signals with the flashlight may also occur. Side effects may include an increase in the desire to cut off toes, sudden fear of heights, dizziness, and incredible bursts of strength that can allow you to dangle a whole person out of a window with just one arm. Ask the Croat if Gulesta is right for you. There's a glass sky bridge full of walking corpses. We can make it really hard to make it across on the wings of Gulesta.
Well, if that doesn't put you to sleep, I don't know what else will.
Oh, I'm sorry. I dozed off a little bit there listening to the ads.
Yes.
I gotta say.
Wow.
It relaxed me. It put me in a state of ready to talk about ghouls and,
boys and ghouls.
Concussions.
And concussions, yes. And small bleeding head wounds. I mean, right, there you go.
Exactly.
All right. So the episode description we have, and it's really funny because, yes, I will, just like normal, it's sparse. I think this one kind of apt. Yes, people, apt.
You heard him.
I know, and I don't usually use swear words like that, but it is. So again, this is episode 2.7, and the title is what Diana had said earlier. And the description that we have is as follows. Negan and Maggie go on harrowing journeys and face unexpected challenges. And I have to agree, they did.
Good.
So well done. Intern for Wikipedia or whoever that wrote that description. You earned your half of a college credit this week. So
well done.
All right, so yes, well done. We salute you. So our writer and director, like we kind of teased a little bit when we were giving our quick thoughts, it's, people we've talked about a lot already, and that is the writer is the showrunner, Eli Jorn, or Jorne. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He does have the little accent on the E on the back. And again, he's the showrunner this year. He was the showrunner last year. It's clear that, like, this was his show idea, that he went to the Walking Dead people and said, what if we did a Maggie and Negan show set in New York? And so I mean, it's his baby, and this is, I believe, the 3rd episode of the 7 that he's written. So clearly he's putting a lot of his own writing into this season. And we've talked about him a ton. He worked on the Walking Dead main show first. That's how he got started, and now he is the showrunner. And our director is, of course, Michael Satrazemis, super heavy hitter Walking Dead director. Like we've said, after Greg Nicotero, he's like number 2 in terms not just of quality episodes directed, but just number of episodes directed on all the Walking Dead shows, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. Main show, Fear, World Beyond. I think he even directed some of the Tales of the Walking Dead. So been involved in everything. We talked about him a ton. He's really great at what he does, knows the material, knows the assignment, and usually delivers the mail. But today or this week, absolutely does. So that is your writer and your director.
Nice. So really
So wait, you don't like Puccini?
It's not whether or not I like Puccini, it's that Maggie seems to not like Puccini. So, great cold open, I thought, with just a simple scene of Maggie getting to the Dama's place and
the theater,
going to her room in the theater and scoping it out, and she's seeing like the aftermath because there she is on the floor, or is she? But there is somebody on the floor, but the music is playing, so it's like, who put that on? So she goes over to the record player and she shuts it off, and there's a little voice, "You don't like Puccini?" And it's the Croat.
Well, we should point out it's a phonograph. It's not like
a
record
right.
player. I mean, this
because
is like an old school thing. This is not,
and everything that's in like the Dama's like apartment there is all like antiques and like dripping with like money. So you're right, she wouldn't just have a regular old record player. This is something. But it's funny because Maggie gives like zero shits about that, and she just knocks the needle off and just like holds down the player to stop.
Well, and like either the fire, the heat or something like warped the record, because the record's not really playing. It's sort of like, it's like part of it will be normal speed, and then like the record is kind of warped, and then suddenly
when she went to stop it, you
could
see like from the side the view that the record itself, like the record album, was kind of like warped, like kind of wavy looking. So that's
right.
And that could be because of the heat, like you were saying, from the fire. Could have been that, it's the only copy of Puccini they could find, and it's, damaged or whatever.
Right. You never know.
So,
right.
Yeah.
But I would just say that, if you've watched it multiple times, so, and so did I, we see the charred corpse on the floor, and I mean, you can tell it's a woman's corpse. It's wearing a skirt. I mean, it's and it's in the exact same position. The whatever that big metal like clothing rack or whatever is on top of it. I mean, it certainly looks exactly like when we last saw her.
And it's funny, like, I mean, obviously, spoilers, if you didn't know, then you haven't watched the episode, what is wrong with you? But if you haven't, then stop right now. But obviously, with the reveal at the end of the episode that the Dama is alive, when I watched it, when I watched it again, and I watched this scene again, the second time, I paid real close attention. I didn't pay as close attention the first time. I was like, oh, it's just the Dama dead on the floor. But then the second time I watched it, I was like, is it the Dama? Is it, like, how good did they do? Like, is there anything that looks out of place? And there isn't. And it's perfect because the person who was in the room and saw it all happen was the Croat, and he's right there. And he's just like, he's acting like somebody, pissed in his Cheerios. He's very, like, down in the dumps. Negan wants me to go away, and my Dama is dead now. I don't have anything anymore.
I have no more hard candy.
I have nothing. I can no longer.
I lost my ear.
I can no longer sit in the street like a cafe and just sit and eat my sandwich. It's Oh,
Eat
no!
the pate. Oh no! And suddenly the Croat is French.
Yeah,
I don't know how this happened.
I don't either. Just some kind of thick
He's
accent. So we're being terrible.
He's sitting there going sacre bleu.
When we the internal joke at my house is my niece, whenever you talk about something that's French, she just does the thing with the fingers, kind of like you do with Italian, or like, what's the matter, you, when you hold them in the air. So she does that, and we're like, oh, Gracie, that's kind of Italian. And she's like, no, it's French. And then she'll just say, oui, oui, baguette, baguette. And that's it. And so, and my mother-in-law just went to France and came back, and we literally have like pictures and video of her in France saying things like, oui, oui, baguette, baguette. For my,
oui, and
yeah.
baguette, baguette.
So,
well, that's where she's learning it.
Right. So, we're making fun of all of the nationalities today, and and to that
classic.
I say oui, baguette, baguette.
Baguette. And you know what? We're America.
Yeah,
Too bad.
we're definitely and what's more American than making fun of other nationalities?
And that's kind of our thing.
It's how we roll, people. Sorry. And no, truly, I am sorry. We're kidding. We don't really mean it. Please don't hate us. We don't align with this administration.
Please don't hate us. Oh,
yeah,
too late.
Too late. So great scene because the Croat he's down in the dumps and is not willing to help Maggie. He's just like, I don't know where your son is, lady. I don't know. If he's not here, he's not here. And he's not in a helpful state of mind. But then Maggie approaches him with the knife and holds it at his throat and makes him a little more interested in helping her out.
Yes.
And we both included the quote of all quotes when she got that knife right up to his neck and she says, tell me where he is, or I'll cut off tiny pieces of you one by one, starting with your toe. And he's all of a sudden like, okay, so I'm on board. Herschel, I love Herschel.
So we're gonna go look for your kid.
Herschel. I think he's a great kid, and I'm invested in finding him, is what I'm trying to say. So
right,
yeah.
Well, but and interestingly enough, first of all, when she after she says, I'm starting with your toe, and then she kind of says, you cut it off of Herschel. And he's like, oh, yeah, I did. Said, but I wasn't the only one that was doing what the Dama said. And he kind of spills the beans that, like, like he said something like, when she explained the reasons for needing the toe, he gave it to her willingly.
Yeah.
He let me cut it off. And Maggie is like, what the fork?
And it's great because it's because that line happens in the scene where they get to the little bedroom that she did for him.
The elevator.
So the elevator bedroom. Yeah. And it's great because she's already in a state of mind of how would you feel as a mom if the only thing you've been able to do is keep your son quasi safe, and he's got like a desk, like where you are back at the Bricks, he's got a desk and a bed. And that's really it. And he's got some paper that he can do his drawings on. This is like a suite at a hotel, with the wood walls and all this other stuff. And it's gorgeous in there. And to walk in and be like, well, of course my son hates me. She's going to give him this,
right.
And I put that in my notes where it's like, as soon as she walks in, you can see the look on her face that she understands what she's competing with, Up until now, it's just been like this, the Dama's been kind of like this strange figure or whatever, but then she physically sees what she was willing to offer to her son, and it's like, oh God, like, this is a really comfortable, beautiful place to live. Of course I wouldn't want to be with my mom if I could come back and live here. You know what I mean? So she's already in that state of mind. And they bring up because he's like, oh, I did this for the Dama. And she's like, is that what you did all the time? She's projecting her anger at the whole situation over to the Croat. Is that what you did? Is you just did everything she told you to do? And he's like, like the toe. Yeah. And he's like, listen, she explained the toe. And your son said, take it. And we did it.
The kid's like, chop it off.
So she's already in a weird state of mind, and then the Croat drops that knowledge about the Herschel willingly giving up the toe, and she just cannot comprehend that in the moment and has to sort of turn away. And I wonder too, like, you said the thing about her being tired, because that's our first moment that we see her kind of like being woozy. And I wasn't sure if she was tired, or do you think, could she be sick? Was what I was wondering.
Oh. I mean, I suppose they could always have it morph into, and she has a fever or something. Right. But just based on this episode and what the events of the last episode, I just get the sense that, she follows Herschel and last week when he goes to poison the water supply, and that leads to the bear attack, and then she fights the bear, and all that happens, and then she leaves to go look for Herschel because he's gone. And so she's literally been up since, the middle of like last night, because didn't you get the sense that like Herschel kind of got up at like 2 a.m. and kind of snuck out when everyone else is normally asleep. So I'm just, to me, the way that just looking at this episode, and again, I don't know what they're going to do next week. Maybe it will morph into something else. But just on this episode, she's been up and running for a long time now, and it's starting to catch up to her. That she's like, shit, I'm exhausted.
I thought of tiredness, but I think, to me, I felt like her symptoms and how she was feeling just felt kind of vague to me. So I feel like, yes, tiredness could definitely be a really good excuse for her being very un-Maggie-like in some scenes. And then that, and coupling it with like this absolute crippling fear of heights, just like together made sense sort of later. But the fact that it sort of showed up first in this scene, to me, felt like it, and I agree with you that, tiredness is definitely a strong contender. I felt like they weren't, they didn't have the moment where he's like, are you okay? Yeah, I've just been up for like 48 hours trying to find my son. Will you help me find my son? Because it seems like she's trying to shrug it off, whatever it is, but she's, but there's no discussion about her, like, not feeling her 100%. And I think later when the Croat notices it, they're already like been going up the stairs, and he's likening it to like the fear of heights, like he's making it a part of the fear of heights. But I think because it showed itself a little earlier, it's not just that, it's something else along with it, I feel. So like you said, either she's overtired and it's the fear of heights together, or there's something else that they'll be more explicit about maybe in the next episode. But yeah, I think that's why I felt confused. I felt like it wasn't clear from the writers, which is fine. They made a lot of other things more clear, and maybe it wasn't all that important. We'll see.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that's totally possible. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little Negan, because we get.
Yes.
We get this nice long scene of him and what's that historian kid's name? Benjamin? Because he's like Ben Pierce, right?
Benjamin Franklin Pierce. He's Hawkeye.
How dare you tread on cinematic history there. Television history. Well, the cool thing is that next week they're going to introduce a Barazzi character whose name is Trapper John. See, so. I hope that.
And for like people that are like under 30, they're like, "What are you guys talking about?"
We're so sorry. Google it, people, and maybe you'll laugh a little. Maybe we'll see. Maybe not. But anyway, so we get this great long scene where Negan and Pierce are trying to help with Ginny. He brings like a bucket with a rag, and what he thinks are like, the only sort of medical supplies or helpful supplies that he could sort of find around. And,
Right.
they're in the middle of this. Negan starts having this real navel-gazy kind of conversation with Pierce all about, his past and how he was terrible to his two wives. He's sort of brought to that moment. He has this moment with Ginny laying there, and he has like a little, it was like a part of his dream. He wakes up this way because in his dream, he touches Ginny and comes back with like a little bit of hair. And at first you're like, oh God, is Ginny that bad? And then Ginny flips over and it's Lucille. And
Yes.
so he like wakes up immediately. So he was just sort of having a dream and inserting, Lucille into the mix because, he had to take care of Lucille and he feels like he failed her. So is he going to fail Ginny as well? And, so it's weird. Negan was very emotional in this episode. He had a lot going on in his head, that's for sure. That he's talking through, trying to get through. And so he's immediately, as soon as Pierce shows up, he's immediately telling him, that all of this reminds him of, when he had to take care of Lucille, and that he feels like, he took care of her every day, and he washed her and cleaned her and gave her medicines and, put her on ventilators and things like that. And, he ultimately feels like he failed her. And Pierce, who doesn't know Negan and doesn't know any of the history or anything, just makes a judgment based on what Negan was saying and said that she sounds like she was lucky to have you.
Right.
And he's not in an emotional place to take compliments, I don't think.
No, he's not. He's very much like, you don't understand, kid. All right, I was awful.
Yeah. And he does, and he's got this nice, and it's great because he makes sort of like two sort of large points, and I took one part of the speech and you took the other, and he starts out, as soon as Pierce says she was lucky to have you, he says, nah, I was a selfish piece of shit, but God, he gave me a second chance. And then he continues on, and he continues talking about, how he had a second chance. And he's like, first I'm with Lucille, and then I've got this second chance, and I've got this absolute ballbuster in Annie, my second wife. And she's great, but I failed her too, and then he includes this really great line, which you've got there, which we should talk about.
Yeah, but before we get there, though, when he started going, but then I got this second wife, and he goes, she's the grab you by the balls kind of thing. I was just like, I would have literally like sent them all the money I have in my bank account if he would have said, and her name was Sherry.
What I thought was great in that moment was he was like, she was like a grab you by the balls kind of gal, and he literally at some point like looks at Pierce and he's like, you know what I mean? And I want to be like, he has no idea what you mean.
Oh, and the kid nods yes, and I'm like, you do not. What are you talking about? Anyway, I was right there with you, absolutely. But yeah, I was just like, oh, please say Sherry, please say Sherry, please say, because that would have been hilarious, and of course there would have been outrage,
I mean, technically that was his second wife. He had a handful of second wives.
I know. Well, one of, right? Yeah, but no, unfortunately or fortunately, depending, he is talking about Annie, and so then he goes, I met her, and then he talks about how he, like you said, like you just got to saying, he also believes he's failed her and his son. Right, who has the little grin that just explodes and is wonderful, and he's saying all these nice things about both of them, and then he goes, then the second part of the line is he goes, but God, he keeps giving me second chances, and I got no forking idea why. And so again, we're back to contemplative Negan, much like last week. Where he's very much, Negan is very much at a crossroads because he just really doesn't know what to do, and this is kind of new for him. Like his whole like apocalypse life, everything has been very obvious for him what he needs to do.
Yeah.
you know, and for the first time, he's just like, man, I got no idea. I really, don't, please tell me what to do. I don't get it. I have no direction at all. And that's new. And he's really struggling, as you would imagine anyone would be when they're kind of at that sort of, like mid zombie life crisis, maybe is what you'd call it, right? Where they're just literally like at that crossroads and I don't know which direction to turn at all. So
he's not quite as bad as the guy that they come upon in Fallout because he's still taking his drugs. He'll get there eventually, but he hasn't run out of his little stuff to inhale just yet.
Somebody's been watching other shows.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, Negan's life before all of this stuff going on was very binary, black and white. And even when he was with Annie, black and white. We do this or we do that, and that's it. But then now with all of this other gray thrown in, and he's not sure what to do. And it's obviously because, he sends away Annie and Joshua, and it's like he wants to be with them more than anything, but he doesn't want them to be a part of this because this is old Negan, and he doesn't want old Negan to be a part of this new life. He wants to, have it die. If he had a choice, he would not be in the leather jacket. He would not have the bat with him, but he's almost got to it's very Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He's got to play this character to help the people out, just like Jeffrey Dean Morgan is really gonna be connected to Negan until he dies, so
right, yeah, exactly.
There's nothing he can do. He has to play Negan. But yeah, right. I agree. It's an emotionally charged episode for him, and it's interesting. It just goes to show how, I don't want to say how far he's fallen, but how down he is on himself and everything, that he's reaching out to this kid and talking to him about all this emotional stuff when it's so obvious. I mean, this kid has no experience with anything. He even admits it. He's like, I have no life experience whatsoever. And so, but Negan is confiding in him, and, it's obviously place and time. If it had been anyone else, he probably would have unloaded on them as well. But still, Pierce gets to be the lucky one who hears, when people are like, that Negan, he's a son of a bitch. And he'd be like, why? He was practically crying when I was chatting with him.
Yeah, he seems
I don't
nice.
understand this Negan thing that you're saying. He seems like a swell guy.
Yeah, and I appreciated too that I've never been super fond of the Pierce character, and I think a lot of it is just the name choice, where I'm just like, ugh. But I did appreciate that he kind of got a chance to be a little introspective too, and he sort of revealed that, he said he was 10 when the end happened, right. And he says, I have no memory of anything before.
Yeah.
Even though he was 10, and not only of events or things, but of people. So he does, you have to guess, he has no memories of his parents, of, if he had brothers or sisters or anything. His whole life from before, and the before time is just a blank slate to him. He just has nothing. And he's struggled ever since in this crazy world with no backstop of good time memories to try and get you through the crappy stuff you're going through. No, nothing. And so I appreciated that. I thought that was it made him a little bit less of a piece of cardboard that's being moved around from place to place on the set. So I enjoyed that. Did you think that was at all worth spending the couple minutes or not?
Yeah, I mean, I just, the interesting part of him saying he didn't remember anything from being a kid, that's interesting. Plus it's, as soon as you give an age or whatever, and we've got the assumption of we're about 15 years in, we're about Herschel years in to the apocalypse, then that would make Pierce probably around in that 25 to 27 range based on whatever
Yeah.
where we are. I thought it was helpful because I think, and what's interesting is, I feel like him hearing it, like Negan hearing it was one thing, but I feel like Maggie could have heard that and, gotten some interesting information about Herschel there, because Herschel has no connection with the pre-apocalypse, and he has no, lived experience or anything like that, or maybe he has more than Pierce does or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, I thought it was a good scene, and interesting how he felt comfortable enough to open up to Negan that way, this person he's barely met. So, but what's great is he brings this like little thing of it's burn cream.
It's like burn
Yeah.
cream or something.
And it took me a second to realize what the significance was, because he's like, it's burn cream. I don't think it's going to be able to do anything. But it might work. It might help clean up like the edges of her wound or something like that, or it might disinfect it. Who knows? Whatever properties are in there. But Negan snatches on it, and it took me a second to realize why he was so interested. And it's like, this isn't like, the grandma down the street made her own little sort of like poultice of like burn cream and it's in a jar, like homemade. This is like a commercially produced tube of burn cream, which means someone found it in like a pharmacy or a store or some cache of medical supplies somewhere. Because it's hard to find that stuff now. And that gets Negan off and running. Where'd you get this? Let's go find out, and then he ends up in this conversation with a couple of the Baradzi, and this one guy tells him, and I thought this was a great moment, because how many times are we in this show and in other shows where someone's like, there's a story, there's word that there's, a cache of drugs somewhere, or I've heard stories that there's a cache of pharmaceuticals in this building or in that building or whatever. But I love how the way they worded it, where he tells exactly that to Negan about at the Bellevue hospital, and he's like, but man, it's just stories. He's basically admitting, like, it's been so long, like at this point it's probably either an urban legend or whatever was there is long gone. It's
been looted. Yeah.
So he.
But he also throws in the caveat of anybody that's gone out to like look for this treasure has never come back too. He adds that little caveat too.
Yeah. So while you could easily, if there were a lot of other scenes that were like this, you could easily look at that moment and think it's kind of tropey, there's this place I'm going to send you to, but we've never had anyone come back from there, It does have some tropiness to it, but the story, he's basically like, people don't come back, but there's this urban legend, but at this point it's just a story. He's basically counseling Negan, don't go there. Like, it's overrun, there's stuff in the building, it's not safe, and on top of it, you're probably not going to get anything anyway because it's been so long. Who knows if there's even anything there, But he gives them the details that he's heard of the story, which is that the word is that there was a nurse at the Fall who who gathered up as many pharmaceuticals as possible and hid them in a surgery room on the 3rd floor. And he's like, great, where do I have to go? And he's like, Bellevue Hospital. Is like, all right, off we go. and away we go. We're taking a trip to Belleville. Bellevue, not Belleville.
Bellevue, yes. Oh, you could go to Belleville,
if you want
I suppose.
to, but why would you?
Maybe to pick up smokes and road beers and then head over to Bellevue. I don't know.
Who knows?
That this was one of the nits for me in this
was
episode.
the story?
That just the convenient of oh yeah, sure, when he goes out and asks where did you find this, and he's like literally it's like Chris Farley in Wayne's World, dropping all this expo, and then Wayne's like, he seemed full of a lot of information, where it's sort of, I just thought it was very convenient that there's the guy that's heard the legend. It's like, how did you hear about this nurse from like 15 years ago? And isn't it great that it's in a hospital somewhere on the third floor in an opera? It's like, you know what I mean? I just don't get me wrong, I loved the stuff in the hospital. It was great, but I was just, like you said, very tropey, and I just was kind of like, really? Are you going to find some? Don't you think that dude's like, yeah, because he had a whole bunch of medical stuff.
Yes.
Right, he had like bandages and like a stethoscope and a blood pressure thingy, and because Negan's like, show me what else you got, and he's like showing him. He's like, no, I want medicine, and then that sparks
the conversation,
the story of how, which is not. I mean, that's not what Negan asked you, dude. Negan asked, where did you get this tube of burn cream, right? So and the answer to that was like, I found it on some dead guy, 3 blocks over or something, but somehow he sparked the story of, well, yeah, supposedly there's this like never-ending supply of medical stuff if you could find it, So yeah, like I said, I had a little bit of a really moment, but like you said, Michael Satrazemis, he has no forks to give. Right. And he just is like, we're off, let's go.
Right? And don't get me wrong, it felt very tropey to me. It just there was like a line or two from the Barazzi guy that just made, in the way he played it, like it made it like not bother me as much. Like, but I fully admit, tropey to have that all happen for sure.
Tropey, baguette.
Yeah, baguette. So off he goes, and then we pivot back to Maggie and the Croat when let's climb a tall building. Sure, why not? Because in that scene, when they're in that scene with in his little room, he left behind some of his drawings, and the Croat sees the one of the sky bridge, and he's like, yeah, he might be one other place. There's a safe house, and only we know about it, and we told him to go there if the shit ever hit the fan or whatever, and so he agrees to take Maggie there. So they get there,
and I think he said that he showed it to Herschel once too. So Herschel's actually
he knew about it. Yeah. So he he brings Maggie there, and it's one thing to see the drawing of it, but then to see it in actuality, these 2 buildings connected by this glass sky bridge that's probably a good 50 floors up, at least.
Oh, yeah. At least,
and then and on one side is this building that has the safe house, but all of the lower floors are impassable. They're all sort of caved in on each other, and there's no way to get up to the top from that side. You have to go up the building where the floors are still intact, go up that building, and then cross the sky bridge over. And I love how the Croat's just like, so we go here and then we go there, okay? Let's go. He's just very like matter of fact, like away we go.
Yep. Yep.
And he warns her, he's like, there's booby traps and things like that or whatever, so just, be very careful. And so they start going up, what looks to be like 50, 70 floors or whatever.
Oh my God.
To get up to where that sky bridge is to cross over. And it's taking a long time because there's, they show there's like little tripwires and these little booby traps, and it's taking them forever. I mean, it would take them forever even if there weren't booby traps. I mean, who like goes up 50 floors like that? You know what I mean? And so...
Well, and keep in mind, Maggie is exhausted and running on fumes.
Correct.
And now she has to go, get her cardio or steps in on the Stairmaster, up all these flights. And we see her, and she you know, when he comes up to the one booby trap where he like is like, I gotta like diffuse this one, and he's getting out his tools and, you know, little pieces like attached the wire to and stuff, and he's just like, don't move, and she's like having a hard time just standing.
Yeah.
You know, where she's like, you know, literally kind of doing that sort of like spin thing, you know, where your equilibrium is kind of in and out.
Yeah.
And clear, and she's they start doing the tricks where the audio starts going a little wonky when we're looking at her, and you know, it's clearly like she's not like quite receiving information the way you normally do, because she's like this close to falling asleep, right?
Yeah.
She's that tired.
And this is the scene I was talking about earlier where, you know, she's got this, you know, other thing going on where she's tired / possibly sick, we're saying. But yes, tired. She's definitely not herself and is swaying a little. And he sees the sway while she's near the edge and has this whole conversation about how fear of heights, which I thought was interesting, where it's like, fear of heights, it's this thing, it's not actually about the heights, it's about wanting to join you know, whoever fell already or whatever. And he talks about how, you know, is it genetic, or were you affected by seeing something happen, you know? So, which I thought was a really interesting conversation. And so he's, you know, he's talking about like this fear / you know, aversion to heights. She's feeling these other symptoms, but is also listening to what he's saying, and is it affecting her? So you can see her, she's getting kind of vertigo-y, like everything's starting to spin, and it's getting a little much, and she's right near the edge, and, you know, Diana's a little afraid of heights too, so watching that, I was like, okay, lean back, please. Yeah. Lean back, please.
Yeah. Well, and they do that trick because she looks down the stairwell, yes, and it literally just descends into darkness, right? And they do that trick where like the camera is physically moving backwards, but the lens is zooming forwards. Mm. And so you get this perspective shift, even though the camera, because of it, the camera's not actually moving. I mean, it is, but because of the zoom, you get the feeling that it's not, but it looks more like it, the what you're seeing is stretching almost. Yes. You know, it's a very effective shot. You know, very famously they did it in Jaws, and you know, it's been used a ton of other movies and shows as well. But you're right. It just sells the idea that Maggie is like, you know, like, oh God, heights, I'm not well. Yeah. But then she gets snapped back into it because he like trips whatever the trap is there, and like this big like spiky ball thing comes swinging down at like head level right past her, and like embeds itself in like the brick wall behind her, and he looks over and he's like, I told you not to move, you know. And then at that point, I think that's when she's like, you're telling me that my son got through all of these booby traps. And he's like, you underestimate him. And I'm like, no, Croat, no. There is absolutely no way that screw up of a kid could make it up all this shit. There's no way. There's no way. Maggie should have been like, he didn't come here. We have to go look somewhere else.
But what's interesting is, he gets away with it. Now, we know that he didn't climb up there. You know what I mean? We find that out later. So when you watch it a second time, I'm like, well, how did she not see when he said that, and when she said, you expect me to believe my son did this, and he answers, you know, you underestimate him, he unknowingly, he taps right into the feelings of guilt that she's already got going on when she saw like the Dama's apartment she gave him, and he was so happy he was drawing while he was there, and blah blah blah. So she's already feeling these feelings of like guilt and inadequacy, and coupled with like all these physical feelings where she's like feeling like crap, and, you know, tired and afraid of heights and all this other stuff. And so when he says you underestimate him, she just like takes that in and is like, yeah, I'm pretty much a terrible mother. And Jess is like, okay, let's keep going. I will not question my son. Now, obviously, with hindsight, clearly, he doesn't have the skills to do all of that. He would have tripped the first one. But I think that the Croat, like, his point, like, drove home exactly the way it needed to and got her to continue going up the stairs. So, yeah.
Well, and again, she clearly, her mind is not working at 100%.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah. So when he says, no, you just underestimate her, she's just kind of like, all right, let's just keep going. But I mean, just logistically, like the way my crazy brain works, I'm like, okay, like this stairwell, like nobody comes up here. So there's got to be a nice layer of dust on all the steps. And you could easily tell if someone recently went up them, and that there would be footprints, there would be, something. But again, they didn't delve down into that level of minutia to satisfy Crazy Steve. But I just all the complexity of those booby traps, and I'm like, that kid can't like tie his shoes by himself.
Yeah.
Based on how we've seen him this season. So you're going to tell me that kid was able to go through all these booby traps and navigate that the cubicle wall maze by himself in the dark at night, in space? I mean,
a couple of points. First of all, it's big of you to admit that you're a crazy person. That takes a lot. I'm here for you, and this is a safe space. And second of all,
that's right.
That's a lot of times to say the word booby over and over again. I'm just saying. That's all I have to say about that.
I just
I don't have any points about
I just really enjoy it, Yeah. And by the way, I'm spelling it Booby, just so you know. So
B-Y. Okay. So it doesn't mean the other
thing. Not Bobi. Yeah. So yeah, right, exactly. So anyway, this was also kind of another little nit for me too, just because I mean, once the complexity of the booby traps and things, and also there's a bit where the Croat kind of slows down and he's like, okay, I gotta take my time here, and Maggie's like, you don't remember where you placed the booby traps? And he's kind of like, yeah, it's a long time ago and stuff. So again, like, it's like starting to like poke holes in his story, that it's like, look, if you, brought the kid here like a month ago when he was on the island, the only time he was on the island, wouldn't the traps be a little bit fresher in your mind? Yeah. Wouldn't you have had to trip one of these traps like you just did so you guys could get past it? So many. So again, I sort of had that like, Maggie, I know that you're obviously a little compromised, but you're smarter than this, and you should be like, yeah, he ain't here, let's go somewhere else. But again, I loved all the stuff that's coming. So it overall, I'm sort of like, all right, let's just see what happens.
Yeah. So when they get to the top, then they start sort of moving through, like you said, there's this fantastic like cubicle maze that's set up.
Mm-hmm.
And until we know what's at the end of it, we don't know. And at first it felt like he was leading Maggie through this maze in order to have her get lost. You know what I mean? Like, he was moving a little further ahead than he should have been. I don't know. Like, it just felt like he was trying to lose her for a little bit there.
Yeah.
And she was sort of on her own. She's struggling. There are some ghouls there that come out of nowhere. Then, of course, my favorite trope in the whole world, her flashlight stops working right when she needs it most. Of course. Which is always, I like that they addressed it later with the whole thing with him fixing it. But it's a trope that it broke to begin with. Like, I like that it gave them this nice little scene where it shows how practical some of his knowledge is and all of that, and how smart he is. So, it helps you really see like the full breadth of knowledge that he has that's applicable in even some of the smallest circumstances. He could take a flashlight and fix it.
Yeah.
Now, how they're able to provide batteries that still work for these said flashlights, into 15 years in the apocalypse.
Oh, see, you're asking way too many questions.
Such a logic hole pusher. Like I punch little holes in everything, and I'm really sorry, folks. But anyway, so all of those things are happening, and it felt like he was doing the thing where he's like, come on, follow me, and he gets a little too far ahead. So at first it felt like he's trying to lose Maggie, and then, she's got to kill all these ghouls, which of course she does without any problem. She's like sort of stumbling around, you know what I mean? She's almost a ghoul herself.
Oh, yeah.
She's like... She's practically like, she's like stumbling and shambling and whatever, and she puts them all down eventually, and it, a little tense there for a second. I wasn't afraid anything was going to happen to her, but still, some good ghouls and some good action there. And then when she's finished, the Croat walks up and he just says to her, "Bravo," and I'm like. So did he orchestrate it, or was he just giving credit where credit's due, that she dispatched a bunch of ghouls and he was impressed? I don't know. It was hard to tell what the intention was there. So.
Yeah, I think when we finally get to the end of the Maggie portion of the episode and we find out the Croat's motivation. I think it becomes clear that he was, not trying to lose her, not trying to set her up. That was the thought I had throughout the whole episode. I'm like, man, Maggie, there are so many times the Croat could have killed you on this trip.
True. Yeah.
When she's standing looking out the window, he could have just walked up behind her and just gave her a little pat on the butt and out she goes, And when I watched it the first time, I'm just like, what is wrong with you? Croat, this is not the character that we were like, the way Maggie described the Croat to Negan in season 1, like the reputation, that he's this insane killer and, is this guy that'll just, he won't think twice to put you down. And here he is in this moment where, I mean, even like back at the Dama's apartment, he had like multiple opportunities that he could have just killed her. And he doesn't. And again, like I said, once we find out why he's leading her to this on this crazy journey, you're like, oh, okay, well, he kind of needs her.
Yes.
He has like a task that he wants her to perform. But the cubicle maze was amazing. On the one hand, to me it's like a live action version of Pac-Man, which is great.
I didn't even think of that. That's interesting.
Instead of ghosts, it's ghouls, that are roaming around, and you're right. She does, take out the ghouls, but I would say, she struggles a lot. There's one where she like stabs it and like kind of misses the head and doesn't really. She's not aiming for the head, right?
She should know better, really.
You should, but she's just exhausted. She's just so tired. And then like her flashlight conks out, and then there's that great bit where she looks forward and she sees the Croat, and he then is like kind of moving in slow motion, and then he just literally blinks out of the image. And you really get the sense that like, her brain is really struggling to process information at this point because she's so tired. And then I believe the next thing that happens after he comes back and says bravo, she like passes out.
Yeah, she does. That's true.
Yeah. And it's just down goes Patterson. I mean, she's just out. And then she wakes up and she's, they're in like a conference room, and, she's like lying on like some cushions or something from a couch that he found. And clearly a little time has passed. I mean, I'm guessing like 20 minutes maybe. And this is where he's like, at the table of the conference room, and he's taking apart the flashlight and is like doing his thing, fixing it. And you're right. I love that scene too, because it in this case, it kind of reinforces everything we've heard about the Croat, that he's like one of those people that can take something and like, reverse engineer it, take it apart, and then put it all back together correctly and know how it all works.
Yeah.
And he just has that ability, which explains how he could do the methane thing and get it to work.
Right.
And so I really like that. I really like that bit. And I also like that the again, last week was kind of, the I need a hug Negan. And this week it's the I need a hug Croat, right? It's just sort of jumped from person to person. And he starts telling stories at that point about his mom and how, when he was in Croatia, he kind of as a kid, he started to show like the affinity to machines and to do this kind of stuff, which it's an innate ability, right? It's not, I don't really think it's something you can like go to school and learn how to do. It's like some people just have it. And he starts talking about how he was showing signs of having it, which no one else in his family did, and no one else in his family except his mom like encouraged him to like work on and develop. And basically says my mom is the one that, she's the one that encouraged me and was like my, the person telling me, this is something you could do. And of course, Maggie's, response, trying to join the conversation. She's like, I didn't really know my mom. She died when I was really young, and it was just me and my dad. And of course, that forced my dad to the bottle. And so that, was not great. And so we get a little like old Herschel talk, which was fun. And, but we start hearing how, clearly the Croat, mom is super important. And I think it's at this point that he says, once we finish, your little adventure here, maybe I will, try and go back to Croatia to see her. And which kind of expounds upon what he was saying last week, right? Where he's like, I'll go back to Croatia, and hey, Negan, you should come with me, and you could bring Annie and Joshua and all that stuff. So it kind of continues on that, but yeah, I all of the stuff and now up on this top floor of the high rise, I thought was great. The maze was great. The ghouls in the maze was great. That little quiet scene was wonderful, and then they move forward towards the sky bridge, and he kind of like closes the two cubicle walls together to kind of close it off. And absolutely my favorite moment, and I know there's Negan stuff that happened before it, but I just thought I'd mention it, is as they start like working their way towards the sky bridge, it cuts back to the cubicle pieces, and you see the ghoul fingers kind of come through, right? And so you realize that, oh, yep, there are more ghouls coming. I bet this is going to come back and at an inopportune moment.
It's such a classic look too, it gives you, classic Walking Dead feels. It gives you, so many other like horror movies and etc. Like that image has been used multiple times, and I like how they didn't make them just like kind of like Walking Dead, like dirty and brown and kind of putrid fingers. They specifically look like throwback zombie fingers because they're kind of greenish bluish, and they're really well done. So the way they come through, they're just sort of like, they're not like grabbing, and they're not like
no, it's very like slow,
it's very creepy. They sort of like wiggle through, and they're just sort of finding the edge a little bit. It really was very like, it was high on the creep factor. It was just a really nice image.
Wonderful touch, and I have to think that's Satrazemis.
For sure.
That's all him, setting it up. And you're right. These zombies like putting their hand or their arms through windows, doors, whatever. Total zombie trope. every zombie movie, there's at least one moment where it happens, right? And obviously that we're clearly nodding to the pilot episode of the original show with again in a hospital, although that's the Negan storyline that's in the hospital, but with the sign, right, with the don't open, dead inside, and you see the door, Rick looks at it, the doors push open, and the hands come out like they're trying to open the door. I mean, it's a classic, just a classic Walking Dead image, but it's also a zombie trope in zombie stuff in general. It happens in almost everyone always. So I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was so amazing.
There is, like you were saying, there are some Negan scenes that we've kind of jumped over, but we're kind of on a roll with the Croat and Maggie stuff. So I feel like we should just sort of push through, and we can jump back to Negan in a second. Because it'd take us forever to get back to here, because there's so much Negan stuff to talk about too. So I agree with you. So we got the scene where he's at the conference table, and he's repairing the flashlight and is talking a little bit about his history. So you get a little bit of an insight into him. And then they head toward the Sky Bridge, like you're saying. He closes it off a little bit so that they're, but then the fingers come popping through. Now he goes like across. He goes like a third of the way, turns and puts his hand out and is like, "Come on, let's go. You're good. Let's do this." Because she's doing the like, "I don't know if I can do this" look on her face. And let me tell you, as a person who's afraid of heights, I was right there with her. I would not have been able to do that. If it meant life or death, sure. But I don't know if any other reason I would have been able to do that. I am one of those people where I'm so afraid of heights that it's crippling. And if I can't get it out of my brain, then it literally is. There's a really great description is we were visiting in St. Louis, and in the park where the arch is, there's this really nice sort of modern sort of park and garden, and to get up to the area where the arch is, there's this really long walkway, but after a bit it raises up off the ground, and it's this metal, but it's got the little teeny tiny dots in it so that the rain can go right through it, right? All makes sense, right? But the holes in the bottom are big enough and close enough to each other that when you look down, it very much looks like you're just looking down at the ground, and you can see right through. And going up there, I literally, and it's probably like a good quarter mile to take this little like ramp that goes up to the area where and I just remember walking up there, and as you're walking up, it goes from like 5 feet high to 10 feet high to 15 feet high to whatever. And and everybody else is walking up and down this thing, and I'm like clutching the side. And the only thing I can do is look straight ahead, because if I look down, I'm toast. And so and this happens, there's been plenty of times where I've had to just look away. When we drove, when we were in Yellowstone, right? We stayed close to the southern entrance. And when you enter through the southern gate, there's this big long area that is where the roadway keeps climbing up and up and up. And it, on the one side, on your right-hand side, the passenger side, my side of the car, it literally just drops off as a cliff that goes down into like the Yellowstone Falls and the river. It is absolutely gorgeous, right? I literally every day, the first day we did it, I was like out of my mind. I couldn't look. And it's a good 10-15 minutes of driving before you get to some place where you sort of veer away from there. So the second day that we did it, we planned in advance, and I literally sat in the car and I turned myself. I had to have my back to that area and could not look, because otherwise I would just be out of my mind. I'd be clutching everything, just waiting for falling. I get so like really, really, heights are just a really, really hard thing for me. So suffice to say, when I watch stuff that has heights in it, my brain cannot function and I have to close my eyes and look away because it just fills me with such dread. This was one of those scenes. So, because all I do is put myself in the position of that person, and I'm immediately like, oh God, I want to throw up. I'm so like scared. So that's a testament to how well this scene was sort of put together, because I felt every little bit of Maggie being scared of going across there. And, you know, the moments when, you know, the Croat's like, come on, you can do it. I've been in that moment before with something else, with Sarah just being like, you can do it, let's go. And you're like, I can't, you know.
You're like, I really
can't. So kudos to them, because they created an absolute, like, I didn't think, and I agree with what you were saying too, I didn't think that Maggie, the character, was in danger. But it doesn't matter. I still was absolutely stricken watching this scene. And when he put out the ladder, I was like, okay, that's kind of helpful, but not really. And when it broke and I was like,
glass breaks, yeah.
it was terrible, but it was just so well crafted. And I put it in my notes that I felt every moment and it was hard to watch, and because of that I give them props.
It was definitely suspenseful, right?
Yeah.
For me, certainly I saw like a little tip of the cap to Jurassic Park with the scene with Julianne Moore when she, you know, there's the two trailer vehicle that's like the lab.
Yeah.
And the T-Rex pushes it off, and so one of them's hanging off the cliff, and she falls and hits the glass, and she's there, and then it slowly starts cracking. And I mean, she's like over a cliff, right? I mean, not that Maggie wouldn't have died too. I mean, Maggie's like 50 stories up, but yeah, I mean, very similar where you get the little, you know, and the cracks are appearing in the glass, and it's like only a matter of time before it goes, right? And she's already clearly afraid of heights. Is doing the either I'm dead tired or I'm becoming sick, whatever that is. And then on top of it, there are ghouls. Like one ghoul has a hold of her foot, and is like preventing her from crawling or getting up. And then I loved it because that one male ghoul shows up on the other end and starts slowly kind of shambling towards her, right? And with the, it's already cracking because of all the weight that's on there, and you just know as soon as that dude gets there, they're going.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's not gonna hold. And yeah, I love the way they ratcheted up the suspense for that scene. I thought it was great. Like you, and like it was in my note there, it's like I watched it, and the whole time I'm like, Maggie there's no way that anything's going to happen to her, right? I mean, she's clearly, the plot armor is super thick. It's Daryl Dixon level of plot armor, you know. And yet at the same time, it was suspenseful, and you're like, oh my God, you know, and that's great. The question I have for you is, have we ever seen Maggie afraid of heights ever before at any point in the series of any show on this universe? I don't remember it.
But I understand. I understand the question, because it's like, you know, we know this character pretty well, but I wonder. She's also in. She's not herself right now. On top of it all, like, yes, she has some trepidation when they're looking at it. Before they even start heading up the stairs, but she's also not herself, so she's a little weak, so she could be more susceptible to feeling it. Like if she was, it's possible if she were at 100%, she might be able to be like, okay, I'm Maggie friggin' Rhee, and I'm gonna power through this no matter how scared I am, you know what I mean? But she may have just not even had the energy for that. I wonder though, we haven't had anything this tall before. You know what I mean? Like, when would she have had it? This is a girl who grew up in the country and never lived in a house that was more than 2 stories high, you know. And so, you know, and the largest buildings that they were a part of in, you know, Alexandria and the Hilltop, and later on, like, the Bricks and the Commonwealth, like, these are just, like, standard, like, 2 and 3 floor houses and buildings and stuff like that. This is, you know, this is like 50 feet and 50 floors in the air. Like, this is
Right.
pretty high. So
yeah.
maybe it's something she didn't even know she had until she was put in front of something like this. I understand we haven't seen it before, but I'm okay with it because I feel.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the original show and like how many times, you know, were they like walking on like an overpass and, you know, she's right up near the edge and I understand it's not the same amount of feet up in the air,
Right.
but if you're afraid of heights, you don't go up to the edge, you stay away. You know what I mean? It's like you don't, even though it's like, well, I could fall 10 feet, but it's just that innate fear of falling that is crippling, right? And that's what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's 10,000 feet or it's 20 feet. And I just don't ever remember her at all having any problems, you know, sticking her head out of like the windmill or you know, any of the you know, elevated areas where she went during the show and having any problems at all with
Right.
it. And just, you know, just being, you know, it wasn't even a bit where she like would do it, but like you said, like she had to psych herself up to do it. She just did it as if it was no big whoop. And so I didn't remember that. And again, it's sort of like, this is coming out of left field kind of a thing, you know, that I was wondering about. So, and I figured, you know, you have a much better memory of the specifics of the main show than I do, in terms of, you know, the various seasons and what happened in all of them. I remember watching all the episodes, but I couldn't tell you what happened in a lot of them. You know, you like if you were to pick out an episode description and tell me what it is, I would be like, nope, never saw it.
Yeah.
You know, so
I agree with you that, you know, doesn't, when it manifests, like, it should be like a full manifest. Like, we've never seen any hint of it before. And that's true. We haven't ever seen this come up before. But it just, it hit me. I was like, oh, I guess Maggie's afraid of heights. Okay. And it didn't like track with me that it felt off in any way.
okay.
I take your point. I take your point that, yeah, they didn't climb any tall buildings, but yes, they did go over overpasses. They did, you know, maybe they had to climb a really tall tree at one point to get away from ghouls or whatever, and we've never seen this. I would also say too, like, yes, it is very high, but there is no getting around the absolute heights of that sky bridge because it's glass. Like, you can't.
Yeah, right.
I think if it were like, you and I have been to conventions and things where, like, you know, there's a sky bridge that connects the hotel to the convention center or whatever, and it's always like some concrete thing and you can't see through the bottom or whatever.
Yeah,
right. So if it were something like that, which is more common, like, it's far more common to see, you know, because this happens. There's things like this in, like, downtown Chicago with buildings that connect each other.
Oh.
And high up like this. I've seen them, maybe not this high, but definitely high up. But they're usually...
Hey, at the Sears, you know, former Willis Tower, there's like a little glass like cubicle on the top floor that you can step into and look down.
Yeah.
And you're literally standing just like that sky bridge. You're standing on glass and you can look all the way down to the freaking ground.
But
I mean,
I would never.
But people
But I
can.
mean, in practical purposes, like these, like, bridges that connect building to building, you know, I've walked over ones before that were concrete or metal or whatever, and sure, I've had problems personally, but I'm like, okay, but it's a lot more solid. This is like, you look down and it's nothing but looking down, and it's really tough. So,
well,
yeah.
It's a combination of it's nothing but looking down, and it's 15 years after the end of the world, so you know there's been zero maintenance on this building in a long time.
Yes, absolutely. I take your point, and I say that it could be considered flimsy storytelling. I absolutely understand that. It didn't bother me, but it doesn't mean it's not there. So I give you that
Okay.
point.
And I should throw that in too, that, yeah, I mean, I was sort of, again, with the like, wow, so now Maggie is suddenly afraid of heights. But I'm like, okay, let's go. I was fine with it because, again, the way that they just constructed that whole sequence. I mean, all the stuff on the top floor, like when they get past the booby traps and they come into the cubicle maze, right? From that moment to, really the end of all the Maggie stuff, it was great across the board. It was exciting. It was suspenseful. It was well crafted. So yeah, definitely. I was like, I don't ever remember being afraid of heights, but I was just like that. Let's go. I don't care. I'm fine with
Right.
it. So yeah, same way.
Yeah.
That, again, definitely, like if the Fear guys would have done this, I would have ripped them a new one and be like, yeah, I'm sorry, but Dwight is not afraid of heights or whatever. You know what I mean? Be like, that wasn't there. But here I'm much more forgiving, so I'm like, yeah, let's go. I'm having fun.
Yeah, and I would also say too, like along those same lines, like you take something that might make you go, is she afraid of heights? But in a scene that's well written, well acted, and has some sort of layering to it, like you said, you're far more forgiving to a moment like that when it bothers you, because it's like there's so many other really good things that are happening around it that it's not overshadowed by this thing, so, which is sort of how I felt about the whole episode. Like there were things too that struck me like, really? So, which we're gonna get to, because once we get across that bridge, we get this scene of I'm using air quotes here, safe house. Which is really more like where Mile was when he wasn't with the Dama. This was like his little hidey hole before he became a part of the Dama's crew, and it still had like some of his personal belongings there. And the most important thing was he had a box of his, I would assume it's his mom's ashes, I would assume. Or just some sort of... that's how I...
It was awful small for that.
That's how I interpreted it, but it's like, it could have just been a special box that was hers. It could have easily just been that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was... I don't think it was important what was in the box. The box represented his mother in that moment. So, yeah.
I mean, it's some case, and he also had like the like prayer card that must have been at her funeral, because it like had like her birth date and her death date, and it's interesting because he's telling all these great stories about his mom, and all the stories he tells, he never once gives you the idea that she's no longer with us. And now suddenly we find out, oh wait, she's been dead. And not only she's been dead a long time, based on the story that he finally tells her. But yeah, and this is also where we find out why he even came here in the first place. Because you're right, as soon as they get in there and she's kind of looking around, even in her, state, she's still brain working enough that she's like, wait a minute, this is not, the well-furnished safe house with food and medicine and weapons and everything that he said it was. This is like you said, this is like a place that one person stayed a long time ago in, and the remnants, hit like the sleeping bag and like an empty box of Ritz crackers are in the corner. I mean, that's what it is. And she immediately is just like, well, clearly the kid's not here. Why did you lie to me?
Yeah, and she gets so angry, was this a game to you? Was this an effing game? Was this an effing game? And he is so calm and so collected, and she calls him exactly on it. She calls him a coward. He's too much of a coward to kill himself, and so he created this situation so that Maggie could kill him for him. And and make her so angry that she would just end up killing him. And she comes really close to it. She do. And how did you feel about her holding him out the window?
Man, that Maggie Ree, she been doing them curls in the gym. Yeah, because and this was another big nitty pick for me, because I mean, literally, he is like leaning out this open window with his arms out in like the Jesus mode, right? And she is holding him by the lapel of his coat with one hand.
Yeah.
And just and has like this whole long dialogue with him, and the whole time I'm just like, damn, that Maggie Ree is strong. I just, yeah, this was definitely like a, huh? Are you sure this is what we want to do? Because yeah, I did not buy this bit at all. This was just pure fantasy, where it's like, no,
yeah.
No, why? Because no, I mean, that's just, there's no chance. I mean, there's no chance that like someone that, like a well muscular person could hold another human like that for that long with one arm. It's just not going to happen. No. What about you? What do you think?
I feel like if she had backed him up and he had tripped a little bit and fallen and had been on the floor on his back with like from like his shoulders or shoulder blades up, leaning out the window, and she's holding him there, I think that would have made the scene way more believable. Like all I'd have to do is give you a push and out you go. But the whole holding him there, it was very unbelievable. Especially because, like we were saying, she's been dealing with like, she's either super tired or she's coming down with a cold or something, and she's dealing with all of these issues with heights, but she's okay with heights, and let me tell you, the vertigo involved with being afraid of heights, I couldn't watch this scene very much because of her toes out the window and blah blah blah, and I'm like, that's like, I'm getting the heebie-jeebies thinking about the image right now. It's so bad. So like, for her, she can't have the scene she just had and then be perfectly okay with, I'm just gonna sort of willy-nilly hold the edge of the window and then lean out with this guy, and all it's going to take is just like a slight tilt of the weight and we're both going. So like, there's no way that happened. It was a little unbelievable in that moment. So yeah.
Just a
scooch.
Just a bit.
Scotch.
Yeah. But again, we do find out, his true motivation, and he's too much of a coward. I kind of thought maybe there's a bit of his religious upbringing, that like if he's Catholic, which if he's from Eastern, the whole idea of if you kill yourself, you don't have heaven.
Yeah. So
right.
Yeah.
So if you want to die, in the afterlife, you need to have someone kill you so that you can, and if the join your mom, right, you want to be together with her again, and if that's the case, and if he were to jump out the window, well then technically he wouldn't. If she's in heaven, he would go to purgatory or wherever. Right. So yeah, that thought as well, but he does tell this story, and I know you made a note of it too, and that it's just it's like it sets up like a weird timeline, because he like says like his mom left when he was a kid, and then he went like looking for her like later on, like when he was a little older, and then he found out that she like lived like like a mile or two away from their house, like that's where she was. And he like, when he found her, like she had like passed away like the day before or something. But then he says like, and then I came to New York and was kind of wandering the streets, and then the Dama found me and all that stuff happened, and just the timeline doesn't really work, because when did he hook up with Negan and do all that
now, when
stuff?
I watched it the second time, I was mindful of it. The way he describes it is, my mom left, I found her, a few years later, and she was living, it was right before she passed away. So you got to assume, this is pre-apocalypse or right as the apocalypse was happening. Who knows? So he's got this box that he gets from her, and he says, he doesn't say, and then I went to, he basically says, that's why when I washed up on the island, I was feeling like blah, blah, blah. So one would assume that it's, mom leaves, he finds the mom years later. At some point, the apocalypse happens, and he either is already in America for the apocalypse, or he comes to America. But he must have already been in America, because Negan starts up the sanctuary not very long into the apocalypse. You know what I mean? Because, like, if you go by Maggie being pregnant, we're, like, less than 2 years in. We're only about a year-ish in when the whole sanctuary and Negan stuff happens. So if he was part of the beginning of the sanctuary but wasn't there, you know what I mean? This had to have been early on in the apocalypse. He must have already been there. And then he leaves the sanctuary, tries to go home, and then washes up on Manhattan.
Okay.
Which is fine, because it's kind of, it's poor writing. They should have slid in a little line about, when after I left, Negan at the sanctuary, and I washed up on the shores here, it's sort of like showing like the time jump in the conversation. But the way they structured it, you're absolutely right. It totally sounds like he left Croatia and washed up in New York. It erases the Negan thing. If you aren't paying close enough attention, the way that they structure the dialogue there is really, really, really misleading. And it sort of added some confusion and some questions, and I fear that others are going to get confused by it. So, the folks that don't watch it multiple times like us.
Right, yeah, because it just the when I didn't like really break it down the second time through as closely as you did, but it's very confusing. Yes. Because it does sound like he literally left Croatia and then washed ashore on Manhattan and began the Manhattan part of his journey, which is clearly not the story they put out before, yeah, right? So good. I'm glad that you found like a way to explain it, that there is a spot for the sanctuary Croat to happen. Yes. That's good, but you're right. It clearly is yeah. I wouldn't say it's bad writing. It's just obscure writing.
I would say too, like, it was confusing enough that it hit upon me the first time I watched it. I made the note in my notes about being confused about the scene the second time I watched it. The only reason it's slightly clearer is that I usually, when I get to my office and am prepping for the podcast, I'll just put the episode on in the background, and I'll, dot some I's, cross some T's, or whatever. And when that scene came around, I paid really close attention because I knew I had a question. And I do that when there are things that I'm questioning. And it's only in the third time watching that scene that I paid super close attention to like the syntax of the words and was like, okay, they're not jumping over the Negan stuff, but the way the conversation is structured, any Tom, Dick, or Harry listening would think that he's jumping over the Negan stuff and is not recognizing that. So yeah. So there you go, okay. People. It took 3 watches to get that. So
watches.
If you didn't get it, 3. I totally understand.
Yeah. So basically we have watch, baguette.
But yeah, baguette. Oui, baguette. I don't want to get to the final reveal scene just yet. Let's jump.
No. We got some Negan stuff
to talk about. So let's talk about Negan's trip to the Bellevue. There's a lot in this. There's a whole lot of stuff.
Well, first of all, before we get into it, let me ask you, Did you find it a puzzling choice that he did not take Lucille with him? Lucille 2.0?
No, because I don't think he likes having that. He's still in conflicted state. So it didn't make sense for him to have it. Plus it's not really good for like, a knife is better in these sort of like close quarters and trying to be quiet sort of situations. I don't
Hmm.
I
Okay.
was okay with it. It cuz I know that he's struggling with the whole um becoming Negan, here's Negan 2.0. So it did not bother me that he did not have the bat with him.
Okay. That's just like the opening bit when we see like he's outside and he's where the
Mhm.
gate, right? And it says Bellevue Hospital. And you see there has to be like, I don't know, 10, 15 ghouls kind of roaming around in
Mhm.
there. And I'm like, gee, Negan, if you had the bat, it'd be a lot
Mhm.
easier to get through there. But then they very conveniently just, cut out how he made his way through there because then it cuts and he's moving like the piece of plywood to get
Yeah.
inside, right? And it's just like movie magic. Like he got
Yeah.
through. Doesn't matter. But
I'm okay with some of that sometimes because I feel like at this point in the apocalypse, a lot of them know that if you wait for a break in the ghouls slightly and you just move really fast with a purpose, you can usually
mhm,
outrun them if you just move really
yeah.
fast. And then you don't have to worry about engaging them at all because why waste your energy on them when you've got to be like on it when you get inside this building. So I agree. They did not show how he got inside, but I don't know. I was okay with it. It didn't bother
Okay.
me.
That's cool. Apparently, it did
Yeah,
not. So,
yeah.
all right. So he comes in and it was so great. I love this little touch where he's on the ground floor and he walks up to like the sign that has like the various
Oh yeah.
departments and where they
Yeah.
are, and it just right there, pediatrics
Ugh,
third
yeah.
floor. And as soon as they did that, I'm like, oh no, because I knew. I mean, certainly I didn't anticipate the number, but you knew there was going to be a kid
Oh
ghoul
yeah.
in his
Oh god, yeah.
future somewhere, and oh my God, was it
Yeah.
great?
It really was. And it's great because like we got the one and it's this really great scene where he's thrown by the child ghoul. He's
Hmm.
and I put in all caps, of course he sees a child ghoul because
Of
he's
course, yeah.
Negan and he loves children. Um
Hmm.
so they could have just left it at the one because that was a really well
Oh,
made ghoul. It was really creepy. It was an extended scene because it wasn't just dealing with the ghoul and trying to put it down. It was the tripping, the falling, the waking up. It's still in your face. Like after, like they went to
oh,
commercial.
dripping blood into your
Yeah,
cheek.
yeah. Like talk about dodging a bullet there because it hit his cheek instead of going into like his eye or his nose or something.
Oh,
I know, I know.
ah.
So it was it was this moment. They go to commercial, they come back, and you get a continuation of this moment. So it's a nice long scene, and it could have just been the one child ghoul that we saw, which was great because like
Yeah.
in the past, like we have seen some child ghouls, but it's usually just like one or maybe two. I don't know, but I think like maybe two at the most. And this was
Hmm.
OMG.
Oh. Well, yeah, he runs into the one and he can't kill it, and then he like slips and he hits his
Yeah.
head,
Yeah.
right? So now he's kind of impaired,
Yes.
much like Maggie, where he's clearly not thinking 100% like regular,
Right.
normal, and then he still doesn't kill the one ghoul. He ends up just kind of pushing it back in the room and like closing the door, right? And then he starts walking down a hallway, and you see, and this is like a scene straight out of Escape from New York, way in the background, you see somebody run past the opening on the corridor, right? And so then you're like, well, wait, now there are like people in this hospital too. And he like kind of looks, kind of the thing where like you see the movement out of the corner of your eye and then you look, but whatever it was is out of your view. So he kind of sees it or thinks he sees it, but he keeps going. And yeah, he comes around the corner.
As soon as this scene happened, I was like, Steve is gonna love this scene.
Oh, so great, right? He comes around the corner and like my description is dormant child walker forest.
You're right. It really was.
Yeah. And I'm sure you had the closed captioning on.
That's the only way. Like, I think everybody was like, they were just standing there. Why? Because when they had the closed captioning on, it just said dormant dormant child noises or whatever, dormant zombie noises.
Dormant. It was. I thought the same thing. I mean, they're just standing there.
Yes.
And and I think it's just on zombie lore, or the genre itself. I think it's a fascinating question of what do these ghouls do when they're like in a room like that where there's no stimuli to attract them, to motivate them. There's no they're high up. They clearly can't leave that floor or whatever, right? So they're stuck there. They can't see anything. They can't hear anything. Nothing that would, attract them to like, ooh, there's food over there or whatever. What do they do?
Right.
And so I just, it's a really interesting idea that they would kind of like, go into like sleep mode, right? Where they're still ghouls. They're still, they haven't been put down, so they're still like, active, but they're not, because they're just kind of sitting, I mean, they're all kind of standing there, and it looked to me like a lot of them had their eyes open.
Right.
Didn't you get that sense too?
Yeah.
So yet he, Negan is like kind of tiptoeing through the tulips around them and through them, right? And they don't see him.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I mean, what did you think about it? What did you think about that whole concept?
I think if I didn't have the closed captioning on, I would have been pissed. But because it said dormant, I was like, okay, I accept that, because didn't we, we've seen, was it World Beyond, where they had the real dormant zombies that they showed? I was okay with it.
Yes.
I was okay with the dormancy, because it's also, you have to think, like, if they're stuck in this space, in this little space, how else would they have gotten out? Would they, and that guy even said, like, people go in and they don't come back out. Like, do people even make it that far? There's no way of knowing. So I was very cool with it. I thought that it was super creepy.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were, like you said, they were seeing him, and just not recognizing him as a threat, and it's not until later when he bumps into one of them that it almost like it stirs them. It was weird too, because like it's kind of like, how on Last of Us, when it's like they can just be like sleeping and laying there, but as soon as like there's like some kind of, when something hits like the cordyceps network and it sort of wakes them up,
and then suddenly they're
I really got that feeling that it's almost like the body powers down until it's given some outside stimuli. So him sort of bumping into one of them when he was like going through, when he was running after Phantom imaginary Lucille. It was okay. It felt earned, because we did have that stuff in, like I was saying, like in World Beyond, and I was okay with it. And again, because of the crow's captioning saying it was dormant, zombies.
Dormant.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we've seen something like this before, and it felt earned. It felt like it was okay. Plus, it just looked friggin' cool.
And the design aspect, that clearly all of these kids were like in the hospital. They're all wearing bathrobes and hospital gowns, and these are all like kids that were like sick and that were there being treated for, I'm sure, horrible childhood diseases and stuff, right? And there's even like one little girl who has clearly had cancer, because she kind of had the Lucille haircut going, which I'm sure was intentional as well. And just in the Walking Dead universe, the World Beyond did it, but the thing that came to mind to me was in one of the bonus episodes they did in, I think, the COVID year, which had Seth Gabriel and Ross Marquand teamed up. If you remember, they come up to a field of elephant grass. It's head high, and they take out an alarm clock and they wind it up and they toss it in there, and it goes off and rings, and then 12 ghouls get up.
Yeah.
They were sitting or laying down in that elephant grass, and you could not see them at all from the outside. Yeah. And they were kind of dormant as well. They were just sitting, they weren't roaming around. And that was the closest equivalent that jumped into my head from just this universe of seeing that. But yeah, the whole setup was just creepy and weird. And then he's looking at him, and you're expecting them to suddenly do the cat scare and just jump at him, right? Mm-hmm. And then he again, because he's concussed a little, because he hit his head, he hears someone crawling in the vents, it's Die Hard. Mm-hmm. And he turns his head and looks up, and then he almost walks into one of them, right? And then he's just whoa.
Yeah, that was a really nice sort of tense scene there. I loved it.
Yeah, oh, yeah, and then he oh, okay. And you kind of get the sense of okay, man, if you don't make any noise and you don't touch them, you probably can get past them, right? And so, yeah, he does, and he finally gets into the operating room, right, which is what the urban legend said, that operating room, 3rd floor, this is where the drugs were stashed by this nurse. And here we can actually see there are signs that other people heard this story and checked it out, because the walls have multiple holes in the drywall. Right. And so clearly other people were here and were ripping the room apart looking for this, kind of crazy stash of medical supplies. Yeah. And Negan just kind of joins right in, because when it comes back from a commercial break or whatever, he's smashing the wall, creating holes and sticking his head in and looking around, and we get the sense that he's striking out, that he's kind of given the room a really good once over, and there's just nothing there.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a great moment too when he's he pops that hole in the wall and he looks inside, and you're almost expecting something to come out at his face when he looks inside the wall. Right. But it doesn't. So let's talk about the phantom coming from the ceiling.
Yes.
I watched this 3 times, as mentioned, and each time, the way that they filmed that I thought was really well done, so that you would know he's seeing something in his head. It's not really there. He's sort of imagining this.
Yeah.
Because the very first thing you see is you've got the reflection, and he sees just the arm reaching down to get the bag that's in the wall or whatever.
The bag.
And so there's that, and it's very kind of clean. And then you hear thump, 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 and he's following, across the ceiling. There's, something, air quotes, going across the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And then he moves around like some of the there's because it's like a like a surgery or an operating room. There's like some
It's an
there's
OR,
like
yeah.
some machinery and some stuff in the center of the room. So he makes it around the machinery, and in the other corner of the room, in sort of like a dark area, there's a figure, the same one, that's doing the same sort of thing where they're reaching for a bag from the wall. It's almost like the same gesture, like repeated, but they're also sort of suspended from the ceiling in a very sort of Spider-Man / horror movie, the body doesn't bend that way kind of way.
Like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible kind of thing.
Yeah. And they made it look very fake. Like, this isn't really happening. Plus, it's like someone wearing a hoodie, and you see the back of their head. There's no face. So there's all of that. So the first time you're like, oh my God, is there someone there? And then when you see the second one, you're like, oh, okay, he's imagining this, because there's no way that someone would jump down like that way. Like, it was all like defying all the laws of like physics and gravity. You know what I mean? And then he just takes off running after them, because that's the smart thing to do in the apocalypse is when someone runs, you should run after them no matter what. I don't know who you are.
Exactly.
I don't know where you're going, but I gotta run after you no matter what.
Well, I mean, I think Negan's thinking that they've got the medical stuff.
Oh, yeah, I know why.
So, I mean, that's why he's,
for sure. Like, I get it. I know why he's doing it. I'm just like, this just goes to show that he's not in his right mind, because he's going, he would never have done this in any other time. He'd be like, let me, proceed. I'll follow them, but I'm going to proceed kind of a little more smartly. I don't know. Plus, they go through the room of children.
Oh, they do.
And wake them up.
They do indeed. Yes, they do. And then Negan has all the kids there loving him.
They're like, ooh, we love you.
Yeah. The two times that I watched it, I agree that when he sees the other person, and I always got the sense that they were like climbing out of the air duct in the corner. That's what they're doing when he sees them. But you're right. I mean, it is in such an unnatural way that it's like clearly not real. Clearly. Yeah. But the first time I was just like, who is this? And I'm like, is it Hawkeye? Did he come along? Or are they going to introduce a new character now? Or, what is this going to be, nameless, thug number 2 in the credits that just gets away with the supply? What are they doing? But the second time I watched it, you are absolutely right. It is clearly staged to not be real. Nobody could move that way, could hang that way, could bend that way. That obviously he's hallucinating this, right? He's, the bump on his head has mixed with, he's already having the weird Lucille dreams we see at the beginning of this episode anyway. And that, the injury is just exacerbating it and making it way worse, right? And so yeah, and you're right. He takes off after and then runs around, and of course we see in the way they shoot it, the person he's chasing has bumped into the kid ghouls and kind of stirred them up. But like you just said, clearly it's him. He runs into them because he's the only one there. But yeah, so they all come in, and so he chases after, and he gets through the ghouls, and then he finally tackles this person that is got the bag. And when they're on the ground and he's kind of on top of them, first of all, he looks in the bag and it's empty. And it's like a duffel bag, right? It's a gym bag or something, and it's empty. There's nothing in it. And then he rolls over the person onto their back to see who it is, and you see that blue hair, and suddenly you're like, oh, I know who this is.
We've seen your face before in this very episode, actually.
And it's Lucille, and it's and he kind of has it. It's great because he just goes with it. His brain is so, bruised and concussed by what's happened that he doesn't question it at all. He's just like, oh, Lucille, oh my God, I failed you. I'm a terrible person. I would, could have done more. He's just going with it, right? There's no, how could you be here? And none of that, and none of those things kick in at all in his brain. And he literally just, confesses to her about what a horrible person he was and how, he didn't do enough. And she actually talks a little bit, which is great. And she says, you got me up in the morning, and you dress me and you undress me. And she kind of gives him that little sexy wink look when she says that, and they kind of laugh a little. And he's just, everything that she says about all the stuff that he did do, his response is, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I could have done more. I could have done more. I wasn't enough. And then he like kind of turns his head a little, and he like is like, like puts his fingers up there like he's having like a migraine or something. And when he looks back, Lucille is gone. But Lucille has now been replaced
dun, 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 by Annie.
Sherry.
The actual Annie, the real actress.
No, it's Sherry. He's replaced by his ass kicker wife. Come on. No.
Nice try, though.
Would have been something. I'm sure she would have given him a real positive, uplifting message for their relationship. Yeah. But Annie's there, and Joshua, right? So we see both of them up close, and you're right, it is Annie, and again, completely surprised that they got the actor back to do that. I did not think that was coming. I think that would have leaked out. I think that would have been announced. I think. You know what I mean? We would have known this was coming at some point, and no, I'm completely surprised.
And you know what's funny is when we get the little tease when they show Hillary Burton Morgan in the very first scene when he sees her in the dream and it wakes him up. It's funny because Ginny's back is to you, and you don't see him have that moment with, like, oh my God, the hair, and then she turns over and it's Lucille. In that moment when he's like sitting there, they're putting like the little guest stars on the screen, and it literally, before that moment even happens, they put Hillary Burton Morgan on the screen, and I was like, oh, well, we're gonna have a Lucille flashback, and like 4 seconds later she flips over and it's her, and I'm like, you couldn't have edited it a little bit differently so that she was a surprise? Because up until I saw her name on the screen, I didn't know she was in this episode either.
I did not either.
And dude, I follow those people on the social medias, So she was a surprise. So to have her then meld into Annie was an even bigger surprise. And like I've been saying all season, I'm like, well, they got to show her. And I really thought that little scene we got from high up above in the last episode was going to be it. That's all we were going to see.
I did too.
Me too. And what was the thing we said? We're like, if they're going to do anything with her, they're going to have to recast her. Like, there's been no word that this actress is going to come back for any length of time. But they were able to sort of sneak it in, and I got to give them props, man. They did it. And it's such a cute, quick little scene. In the little scene breakdown thing at the end of the episode, Jeffrey Morgan says that it was actually, they were both there on the same day doing filming. He's like, so I had my wife and both of my work wives all on the same day, like it was all on the same day. So it was really cool for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. The way they were able to keep it secret was great. Yeah. That did not leak, because usually that's what happens is, somebody gets a picture of them, at the studio or on the set, and it gets posted, and then they don't, this, why is Hillary Burton Morgan there? Maybe she, you know what I mean, or whatever. And so yeah, I was quite surprised pleasantly that they did that, and. Again, Negan is just in full-blown "I failed you" mode, and this time around, Annie kind of like puts her hands up on his cheeks, and very lovingly, and then she turns his head.
Yeah.
So he looks, and we've seen earlier, like there's like a security guard or a paramedic walker ghoul that's like in like the vestibule of the hotel, of the
Yeah.
hospital, and like the doors that would lead into where Negan they're like is like a crutch or a walker or something, not like a ghoul walker, but like one of the actual metal
Mm-hmm.
walkers people use, that are like between the doors that won't let it open.
Yeah.
And so she kind of points him in that direction, right? And so he goes over there and he opens it up and he puts the walker down, and then he's kind of looking around like, why did I want to do this? Why did she point me here? And then he sees this like respirator machine that's there
Mm-hmm.
in that vestibule. And jumping back to the earlier scene when he's talking to Hawkeye, he talks about how, his wife got cancer and he was taking care of her and he had to kind of figure it all on the fly. And he's like, have you ever tried to intubate someone?
Yeah.
And the kid, of course, as we pointed out, has zero life experience, is like, no, I haven't, but it kind of, this is like Pavlov's respirator, right? That, or Chekhov's respirator, that it's, he references that he knows how to do it and he used one in the past, and now he sees this, and this now is kind of his solution, I guess, that he couldn't find the drugs to, kill the infection, but he has found this respirator, which I guess is going to save Ginny. I mean, if she gets sepsis from the infection, and I don't understand how breathing is going to save her, but I am not a medical person, so I don't get it myself. So, but anyway, then it cuts back and he's back in the sanctuary and she's on the machine and it's like helping her breathe.
And I mean, I guess I wonder if they're gonna try using the burn, because the burn cream is a little bit of an antiseptic. It might help.
It has to have something in it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just surprised, like, why haven't you, like, cleaned the wound out?
Yeah.
Right? And try to scrape the infected bit away and then, like, pour some alcohol
or
on it.
cauterize it.
You know what I mean?
Do
like
something,
it's just like, they're just like, well, we don't know what to do. And it's like, no, what are you talking about? But this was another little nitpicky moment for me, was I'm like, okay, so you got the respirator, but how is that gonna help? Because again, if she gets sepsis, she's gonna die. It doesn't matter if she can breathe.
I'm gonna be able to breathe really well while I'm dying of sepsis.
While my blood turns toxic and kills me. But
my lungs will be clear.
My
lungs will be clear. My blood will be terrible.
Yeah. But anyway, that's sort of the resolution of the Negan Goes to Bellevue story, is that he ended up, most likely the story he was told about the nurse and the stash of drugs, that really probably was just an urban legend.
Or if it was real, it's long since gone. Like, it's the stuff that was there is no way, it's no longer there. There's just
somebody else cleaned it out years ago or something. But he found an alternative, apparently, that he is going to try and employ. And so now, she's on the machine, and it's at that point, I think, that he tells the kid, you got to leave, because people are going to show up here soon and they're going to kill everybody here. And so the kid's like, well, we should go. We should leave. And he's like, I can't leave. I can't leave Ginny. I have to stay and see this through. But Negan is clearly like, you should go, that you don't need to be here for this. Leave now.
Right.
I mean, get out. You have a chance to have some semblance of a life. And Negan at that point then tells the kid, and I wrote this line down, that he says something like, it's okay, I'm gonna stay and it's all right, because I know how to protect her now. And he's talking about Ginny, and he goes, I know where I got it wrong before. Back in the day when I built the sanctuary to protect my people, I showed mercy. He said, but now I'm just going to line them all up and I'm gonna kill them all.
It's tough, like it's tough hearing that,
But I mean, this is not, Negan has espoused this idea in the past
Right.
too, right? When he was locked up in Alexandria, I can't remember who it was he told it to, but he basically said the one thing he was sorry about was that he didn't kill all of them when he had the chance.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that was a Negan moment there. And I don't know, maybe it was to Maggie. I can't remember who it was to, but he did say that was what he was sorry about, was that, you know what, looking back at it, the thing that I most regret and I have the most, sorrow about not doing was killing all of you MFers when I had the chance.
He was like, if I could go back and do it again, I'd have killed you all. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So now again, does this mean that, old Negan is coming back?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, what's the, I don't know. We'll have to see next week. I'm not sold on, because he still feels like, yes, he had that speech to Pierce, but he also had these like really transformative moments with Lucille and with Annie. And so did that break through and tell him anything, or is he just going to move ahead with whatever he's doing? I don't know.
Yeah. We have to see what happens next week.
So the final scene we have to talk about is what
yes,
leads to the sort of cliffhangery episode. Cliffhangery scene.
Certainly the twist scene.
Without question,
without
it's the
doubt.
twist. So, after the scene where Maggie is ridiculously holding the Croat out the window and is yelling at him, and he says, she's like, you're a coward. You were gonna just let me kill you, and da-da-da, and he was just like, I wanted to have a reunion with my mother, and if she's dead, then that means, yes, he just wanted to die. And we sort of, after she pulls him in, she has this sort of, this moment as well, where she's sort of like overwhelmed by everything because Herschel's not up here. And she even is saying to him, he has to be here. I have to find him, And so she's just overtaken by the whole thing and sits down. And there's this really nice moment where the Croat realizes, damn, like, I'm in a bad place. Like, I'm effed up, but she's more effed up than I am. And he recognizes it, and he reaches out, and he kind of, he grasps her shoulder in like that whole, like, I'm with you. Like, I see you. I understand you. Like, a little gesture of like, you're not alone. And then it sort of cuts to later, after the sun has gone down, and they are just sitting. There's like a couch set up there, and they're just sitting on the couch and looking out the window at the skyline at night, and he's telling the whole story that we were just talking about, that, his mother left when he was 12 and blah, blah, blah. And he tells the whole story of how, he found her in the village that was only like 10 kilometers away and all this other stuff. And it's this great story, and she's listening and everything. And in the midst of them talking and having this really great moment where they're sort of sharing all of these things, Maggie looks out and she sees a light. And it's a light doing what, they had a little callback to it when she got the fixed flashlight back from the Croat. Yep. She did the thing where she like covered it and then showed it again to, remind you that she has that signal for her and Herschel.
It was Chekhov's flashlight.
It was Chekhov's flashlight, and he came back.
Yeah.
So they're just sitting there and looking out, and all of a sudden that signal is coming from another building all the way, across the way from them, and it's like, oh my God, we have to go. We have to go.
Well, you see, when I saw it, my thought was, oh my God, the British are coming by land.
Because one is by land, two is by sea. So, exactly.
Exactly. It was just one light that was blinking. So, yeah, clearly.
So they magically make it to that building. They don't show them climbing down, even though we know...
Definitely some fast travel.
Even though there's no way to get across the bridge again because...
Well, they could go across the ladder because Maggie's so good with heights.
Oh, my God. It's making me sick just thinking about doing that. But maybe they did.
See, that was also another little nit that I had with this, is that you're right. They just magically get down. And this is after the Croat goes into elaborate detail to explain that the only way up is in the one building with all the booby traps, that the other building, the stairs are inaccessible. They've collapsed or whatever. And there's not, yet they are like it's literally the snap of a finger and they are there. They're gone, done. And it's just like, really? But I get it. I understand, they only have so much time in the episode. So boom, it happened. Somehow they made it, whatever. So we're there.
If they hadn't shown the ladder thing, I would have been really, really mad. But because they showed the ladder, you could easily go, okay, they placed the ladder across and crawled across the ladder to get back over the bridge so they could go down the stairs. I could conceivably see. And here's the thing. We were talking before about Maggie being motivated, etc., even though she was tired. Well, she's had a chance to sort of rest up for a couple of hours while the sun went down. So she's got her energy back, man. So she's ready to go back over that sky bridge. She probably just jumped over the opening, as far as we know.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So they make it to this other building, and it's really interesting because they make a point of showing the name out front, and it's the New York Times building. And so they get in. The Croat does not come in with her, and she's like, leaves him outside. And she goes in. No,
he kind of goes on his merry way.
I made it this far.
He kind of is
you're okay, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm done with you. I'm gonna go off and do my own thing.
And so she goes in by herself, and makes her way up to the area where she saw that light coming from. She comes upon this room that's has a lamp in it. Like there's some light coming from there, but there's also the flashlight, like a different light that's being used by the window, and it is Herschel by the window. And he turns and sees Maggie, and I kind of clocked it as soon as he started walking toward her. His smile was very off, and he seemed very we're very cult, like, we're so happy you can make it, like, it's so good to see you, Mom. And I was like, ooh, something's bad here. So yeah. I did not clock that there would be anybody else there. And I wasn't thinking of the Dama. I thought maybe Bruegel was there, maybe somebody else, maybe New Babylon people. I just did not I did not think the Dama would be there at all. What about you?
No, yeah, that was, I completely believed that the Dama was done, last episode or 2 episodes ago. So yeah, I complete total shock. Although when Herschel says something like, we hoped you would see our signal or something, he says we at one point, and that was sort of like, we? Who are you talking we, white man? It was like, well, that's not good. And again, Maggie is like so happy to see him. She doesn't, if she hears it, she doesn't really hear it, and put it together so that when, she turns around and then there comes the Dama, and the Dama clocks her right in the face, and you assume knocks her out or something. Right. But you hear, the Dama's like, we're so glad you could come, and then, knocks her cold. Yeah, it was complete shock, and I know you brought up the television rule, which we all very conveniently forgot.
Which is if you don't see the person die, then it's really possible that they did not die, and we didn't actually see the Dama die. We just the Croat leaves her there, and the last thing we see of her is her shouting, Mile, Mile.
Yeah.
To be fair, we hear her say Mile, but we never hear the other the screams of someone who is burning alive, right? We don't hear, I don't remember that part. So that's the last we saw, and then we see the the remains on the floor, because we see it twice, because you see Negan sees it with the Croat, and he clocks the that's when he's there with the Croat, and the Croat sees the rat, and then they have the whole thing later with the boot and whatever.
Yep.
So we do see it twice. We see it with not in as much detail, but we see the scene sort of set up, and then we see it later. And even though we did not see her die, I think they tease you into thinking that you did see her die, even though we didn't see her die. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she back.
Well, here's my theory, and that is, I'm not going to say evil twin, but twin, or sister. I think they're going to go like the Dear Abby Ann Landers route. That were very famous advice columnists back in the day that were sisters. And so I think this Dama that we're seeing is not. I think when the Dama was trapped by the rack of clothing and the fire was there, I think she died. And this is another, like, her sister that is there, that there were always kind of two of them, and they did the whole secret thing. It's a very TV thing to do, a very soapy thing to do. So I would not put it past them that that's going to be their answer. Because if you noticed, she had something was up with her neck.
Yeah, but I clocked that as
she
that
had
she just had a burn on her neck.
A burn mark. Okay,
that's what I saw. And again,
maybe that's what we'll see. That. Yeah, it could be that she somehow got out and then created this elaborate fake. She went and got a ghoul and positioned it in the exact same position, and then let it on fire and burned it to the ground. And somehow she did all this without the Croat seeing her, and then has been hiding ever since. Again, we'll find out whatever it is, but that my money right now is on twin. Is that it'll be like a twin sister that was there all the time, and the two of them, their whole lives were doing this whole, there's two of us, but we only let people see one or something.
That's so. I didn't even think of that as an option. I'm not on the twin path. I think it's just her, but I'm curious to see how she got away with it, like what she did.
Okay. Yeah, me too. And so it's kind of funny because we thought that faction was gone, and now it turns out it's back. And now is she gonna try and retake control of the Barazi and the methane, or is she off on her own somewhere?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see because the Croat has no power right now because he's been pushed out by Negan.
Right.
He's
been banished. Yeah.
Negan is getting prepared for New Babylon to show up because that's what he's expecting, and also Bruegel is probably gonna try and usurp some power.
And he knows that because Maggie told him that Bruegel's
gonna double cross
you. He's going to come over and he's going to kill all of you. That's the deal that he's made with New Babylon. So everybody, like, Negan is kind of like aware of everyone's plans except for the Dama because he doesn't know that she's still around. But yeah, so I essentially to me, my thought is that the Croat is heading north to like this massive wall to like keep watch.
Yeah.
And see if winter shows up ever. and then here we're going to have, the battle of the Bastages at some point.
I mean, that's possible. It's totally possible.
Yeah. And this is from a show I haven't even seen.
Look at you.
So, yeah.
Rolling the dice on the game. So, I think we've done a really good job. We've really sort of like tackled a lot of stuff here.
Oh my God.
Do you think, is there anything that we didn't really hit on that you want to make sure that we chat about before we take our little break here?
Just that the episode, again, like we said, it was very suspenseful, but there's not, if you look at it as a whole, not a lot. It wasn't like wall to wall action.
Mm-hmm.
There were some quiet, talky moments in it, interspaced, and like we said, there's no Kim Coates at all. And the episodes with Kim Coates are so great because he's so much fun. I think if you look at all the episodes that he's in, those are the ones that both of us are like, oh yeah, I love this. I really enjoyed it. And yet this episode was really good. Yeah. I thought I did so much great stuff for both of them. Like I said, my big lament is I just wish that they were together more. Doing stuff in the same scene rather than getting their separate stories. So, but other than that, no, I thought we did a good job. How about you? Is there anything you want to bring?
I think we hit everything. We all the quotes, all of the things that we liked. And I agree. I think it's interesting that for an episode that actually did not have it was not like wall to wall action, still was able to keep you sort of on the edge with these these moments of like tension and like you said, there were also these really nice emotional moments for all the characters really. And, all the way down to like little emotional moment for Pierce, like all of the characters that had lots of lines, everybody had like a moment in this episode, and they were all well done. They were well written and well earned, so it didn't feel like they were just trying to like fill the episode with all this emotionality. It felt right. So it's setting up a really good finale for next week. I gotta say, like, if you were to go back a few weeks ago, I would not predict that I'd be in this point right now, and I'm really, really glad that I am.
Just to be fair, I'm fairly certain next week is the penultimate episode.
No, there's 8 episodes, and today is the 7th.
Oh, okay. I thought today was the 6th episode.
Oh, today is episode 7.
Oh,
Isn't
okay.
it?
Well, then next week is the finale. Hey man, I just show up and talk. I don't look into what's going on here. So.
Yeah, I promise you, it's episode 7. You're good.
Okay. So yeah, so the series finale or season finale is coming up. So yeah, it's gonna. I think I'm the same with you. I'm really excited to see where they're gonna go.
Exciting. All right, folks. Then we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna discuss our listener feedback we received in this past week. We're gonna discuss what's coming up on the podcast.
So please stick around, like you're afraid of heights, because we'll be right back.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally going to get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the best of horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and apocalyptic entertainment. Aim for the Head, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Hi, I'm Ross Marquand, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And remember, always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey there, everybody. We are back. We're going to jump right back into chatting about the episode. We're going to talk first our listener feedback. And we are super excited because we got some listener feedback. Yes, for last week's episode. Came in a little bit late. But it's we're pretty sure from someone we've never heard from before. So, you know, the drill, longtime listener and first time commenter, I suppose, is how you would put it. So first off, we got via the email from our listener, Colette. And Colette, we're super excited that you took the time to write in. You should do it more often. Let us know what you think of this week's episode.
Yeah.
Etc. Etc.
That's right. So first, let me just say, hello, Colette.
Yeah. Hello.
So glad that you decided to join the discussion. This is really cool.
Yeah. And very excited that you took the time to write in. We appreciate it. And via the email, too. It's really easy to just put some comments on the Facebook post, but you got to actually open up your email and send an email when you send one, and it's pretty nice. So thank you, Colette. We really, really appreciate it. So this is for feedback for last week's episode, which was episode 6. The bridge partners are hard to come by. And Colette starts off by saying, first of all, I didn't read the title properly, and I thought it said bridge painters are hard to come by. And let me tell you, Colette, you're not wrong. Bridge painters are hard to come by. I bet that's a really hard job to fill. She moves on by saying, anyway, I'm a big Negan fan. Not sure why he sent his family away. Ridiculous. Also, not the biggest Maggie fan. She's annoying. Love Bruegel. OMG, he's amazing.
Okay, hold on. I have to say, did you write this email and make up Colette? Because this sounds a lot like your take on a lot of things here, okay?
No. Continuing on, she says, love Bruegel, he's amazing. But where did the bear come from? First, it's a grizzly bear. We only have black bears on the East Coast. Oh, East Coast, Colette. Look at you. How did it get to Manhattan? There's no bears at the Central Park Zoo, apart from the sad polar bear that swims in circles. I'm not actually sure he's still there. I haven't been there for years. My kids are all grown up now. So there you go. Colette's an East Coaster, maybe even a New Yorker.
Could be a New Yorker.
It's possible. Let us know. So how did it get to New York City? The Bronx Zoo? Did it swim? I need a backstory. Obviously, the producers and the showrunners listen to our podcast, as clearly. Why wouldn't they? So if you guys are listening, if you could provide, Colette would really, really appreciate a little bit of the bear backstory. That would be great.
I think it probably deserves its own spinoff.
Why wouldn't it? I mean, it would have to be, instead of cocaine bear, it'd be zombie bear. Because
it would be
he not alive anymore.
it would be it would be a prequel. It would be like how did he get there? And it would be The Walking Dead, The Book of Bear, with all the music done by Bear McQuarrie. See, it totally work. I think.
Oh my God. All right, so Colette needs the backstory. She also puts at the end, I listen to all the dead stuff and enjoy your podcast. Smiley face emoji. Please excuse my iPhone. It likes to change my spelling. You're good. My iPhone changes all my spelling too, Colette, so you're good. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for writing in. We love hearing from you. Nothing makes me happier than hearing from a new person, and it's wonderful to hear. So we hope we hear from you more. Please feel free. Let us know what you think of this week's episode, episode 7, and let us know what you think of the season finale coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah, so cool. Thank you so much. And I just would like to add a very heartfelt Jada.
Yeah, there you go.
No, that's really cool, man. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
What if she's not from New York? We don't know yet. She could be from.
Well, I
else.
mean, I guess she could be, a Jersey Shore type of person. I suppose. I mean, she mentions that she went to the New York City Zoo, so I would imagine that she has to be close to the island to do that, right? I mean,
true, but I mean, I grew up in Boston, and I've been to the zoo in New York City.
Okay, first of all, you grew up in Boston, not Boston.
Right. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for fixing how I say my own place.
Come on now, Chowder.
Chowder.
There we go.
That's right.
There we go.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Look, I've seen the town a bunch of times, so I think I have a pretty solid handle on what goes on in that part of the country. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So, Moving along. Now we're up to episode 7 feedback. So that's the episode we just got done talking about. And we, finally back from her little excused absence road trip from last week. We have Miss Erica Price via the Facebook. So hello, Erica. How you doing?
Hey, Erica.
Glad that you survived your little journey, and I hope it went well and you had fun and all that stuff. She writes, Maggie looking for Herschel. Negan looking for meds. Croat looking for a purpose. Looks like Maggie needs to take a nap, and I'm wondering how Herschel managed to get up the stairwell. Yeah, me too. The whole bit around the Croat leading Maggie here is so moo. We've already heard how much he misses his mother. I guess it was just so he could get her ashes. LOL. Yeah, that's true. And that's what you think was in that little box.
I think so.
I don't know. I mean, all I know is like that was awful small for. I mean, unless like she was like someone who was like weighed 30 pounds. I just don't think it was a big enough container. But yeah, maybe it's like some part of her ashes, or maybe it's some like her jewelry or something, some kind of keepsake that reminds me. I don't know. We probably will find out next week. You would think he probably still is carrying that little box, but anyway, she goes on to say Negan has lapsed into the don't look behind you while you back into a new room, like the world fell yesterday. Yeah, he. I mean, he was kind of concussed, right? I think that might give him a little slack, but yes. But how many times have we seen on any of these later shows where people that, any people we see that have survived the apocalypse for as long as they have, yet they act like it's day 2? I mean, that's just kind of a thing. There's just no way around it, right?
Right.
She goes on to say, we know he wouldn't do that. Okay, there's a gaggle of kid walkers in a room just standing still. Why? Some can clearly see him, and they are super glued to the floor. He finally gets there, and there's nothing but damaged walls. Maggie's character has been reduced to a wordless, sleepy crawl. What happened to badass Maggie? Yeah, I've been kind of wondering that too. Maggie is this whole show last season and this season it's like you're the damn widow, right? You're Maggie Rhee. You're better than this. You should be much more feared and badass than we've seen. So I agree with you there, Erica. She goes, I rewatched this moment several times where Negan sees this person fall from the ceiling, and I don't get how they were hovering there and then falls the rest of the way. Why does this look so weird? So they're both hallucinating, and yes, I think we talked about that. We both feel that the person coming out of the in the corner there that's coming down from out of the ceiling, clearly it's designed to look like it's not real.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so I think Erica, that's what we're supposed to. It's just a way of the show of letting us know that okay, Negan is totally tripping balls right now and is just seeing shit. So So then she goes on to say, I know this isn't a medical drama, but if Ginny is unconscious, her lips would not be clamped around the tube. Do better, AMC. And then she finishes by saying, WTF, the Dama is alive? What's the news on this series? Is it continuing? I'm hoping not.
And to answer your question, I wasn't sure, so I Googled it, and I don't think it has been, because the only places I can see that are discussing it are like YouTube accounts. There's nothing that's like, breaking news for like,
Variety or
anything that's like released on one of the blogs,
of
the blogs, or anybody that writes consistently about Walking Dead. There's nothing out there that I can see about season 3, but maybe I missed it. So if anybody else sees it out there, let us know.
Okay.
Yeah,
nothing has come across my timelines, and I have not seen anything that has either confirmed or denied what's going to happen to the show. There's nothing. So that could be good, that could be bad. I mean, they kind of renewed Daryl Dixon for season 3 pretty quick. For that. Yeah, I mean, they were like maybe a quarter of the way through season 2, and it was already like, yep, they're coming back for season 3. So we'll have to wait and see. And maybe they're trying to see what the ratings are gonna final at, and decide. I don't know. I like I said, I'm enjoying this season. I would be okay with the season 3, but I understand that there are a lot of people that are they're kind of like, yeah, we could be done with this, and that would be okay. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think I'm on the fence. I'm like, either way. If it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, I think, depending on how next week goes, I'd like to see how they sort of stick the landing of if there wasn't going to be any more, would I be okay with how it ends, pretty much.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for writing in, Erica. We love your feedback, and it's amazing as always. And, at least stick it out to next week, because we definitely want to hear what you think about the season finale.
Absolutely. And next up, we got a little bit of quasi feedback from Bev, who wrote in via the Facebook. Hey, Bev.
Hey, Bev.
And she wrote, for some reason, I thought episode 6 was going to be the last episode, so I haven't watched this one yet, as I'm still recovering from the nonsense of last week's episode. Needless to say, my husband has now taken to calling it dead shitty. Which is pretty funny. But, Bev, I hope we hear from you next week. I hope that you did catch up and you watched episode 7, and I'm curious to see what you thought of it, because like you, I've been critical of the season so far, but I did really enjoy this one, so I'm curious to see how you feel about it, and if your husband is still calling it dead shitty, because that's really, really funny. I love it.
That is funny. Yes.
It's really good. So hopefully we'll hear from you next week, and you'll be all caught up. That'd be great. And speaking of next week, so next week is episode 8. I don't know if you heard, Steve, but this is episode 7. And next week is episode 8.
I just want to confirm to everyone that this was the penultimate episode, not like it was falsely reported next week was supposed to be. So I don't know where that fake news came from, but it ain't true, people.
I don't know if you have a mirror where you're located, but you might be able to find where the false information came from if you have one handy. Okay, so next week is the season finale, episode 8. Title of the episode is If History Were a Conflagration. And I love that the title is talking about history, considering we know from the clips we saw at the end of the episode that we're definitely going to get some Bruegel, which is going to be great. And the description we have of the episode so far is Maggie makes a painful choice while Negan puts on a show. So I'm curious if Maggie leaves Herschel behind in some way, because you have to understand, people, if we're going to be canon, we get a big time jump in the comics. Spoiler, if you haven't read the comics, there's a big time jump after the end of the fight with the Commonwealth. Yep. And we jump, I don't know, a good 15 years into the future, at least. Because Carl is an adult, and so is Herschel. And there's, if you've read the comics, you know where the story goes. But Herschel is there, but we don't get, we only get sort of like a little bit of an idea of what Herschel has been doing in that time and space. So they really did have this nice big open opportunity to sort of do whatever they wanted. But ultimately, Herschel's not really a citizen of the Commonwealth. He does visit, but he does not really live there. He's been sort of roaming the country with his little carnival thing that he does with the dead. So I'm curious if to sort of line up with the story. Eventually, I wonder if Maggie ends up leaving him behind in New York.
Maybe.
In some way. Be curious to see.
Yeah. You wonder how much, allegiance these people have to the comics at this point. This show clearly is something that Kirkman never envisioned or included in his, universe. So I mean, they might just be trailblazing at this point, and we're gonna tell our own story. We'll have to see though. It's a real good question because you're right. Herschel, kind of a douche in older Herschel. Adult Herschel. I mean, not necessarily a team player. Let's put it that way.
And it'd be interesting to see because his character in the comics in the future, it makes me want to kind of like read those sections again to sort of bone up on where Herschel is. Maybe I'll do that before next week.
Homework.
Because he is kind of douchey, but what he's doing is it's very show businessy. Is what he's doing, and it'd be interesting if they played it off like his inspiration for being sort of like a showman was someone who, like, the Dama is all about like the arts. She was a theater critic and all this, so if he takes that inspiration and turns it into something for him to do, I wouldn't hate that, and it would be fine because there's no real description of how that came to be. It was just like, this is what Herschel's doing,
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, we gotta bone up on that and get ourselves ready for that.
Here's another thing to fry your brain here is that what if?
Oh boy.
What if Herschel were to go off with a certain character on this show who is the unbelievable flamboyant showman, and learns his trade from Mr. Bruegel?
I mean, that's possible. Yeah, that's entirely possible.
Because, Bruegel clearly likes working, up close and personal with the ghouls. He keeps them around him and doesn't have a problem with that. He loves theatrics. He loves to spectacle. He loves, all of that kind of stuff. Maybe they, somehow survive this coming, battle and resolution and they get away and go. Who knows? I think it's certainly possible, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
So
it's nice to know that we're even in a place where we can sort of, chat about like thoughts on where they could go with the show, because like I said, a couple of weeks ago, I just was not there for this show being, anything that was really sort of holding my attention. So I'm really glad that that things, to me, that I feel like they turned some things around and we're getting close to sticking the landing here. So I'm pretty happy with that. So
yeah, me too. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. So,
and I just say we didn't really go in a lot of detail, but one of the things that I was intrigued by in the scenes for next week is that we see clearly the like invasion force from New Babylon does show up, because there's like large numbers of troops, and we see Pearly, and he's all armored up and clearly in command or part of it. So yeah, it's going to be real interesting how like all of these separate factions that are kind of all fighting each other, right? There's no it's us against them, it's every man for himself going on here. How is it all going to play out? So, and then of course, in the middle of it, you have Maggie trying to sort out the Dama and her kid and all that stuff. So yeah, I kind of like you do. I'm real excited for next week because, they are kind of building up to what could be a really cool story finale for this season. So yeah. I'm super excited.
Agreed. Yeah. All right. So just a little bit of podcast news for you as well. So next week is the season finale, which brings us close to the end of June. We're then going to take 2 weeks off because the 4th of July here in America is situated kind of right in the middle of that. And we are both doing 2 separate sort of like get out of town vacation-y things. So we're going to take a little time off around the holiday, but we'll be back just after the holiday. And, we'll have social media out there and we'll talk a little bit more about it next week, but we already have a plan in place. And we're pretty excited. We're going to cover season 1 of the Amazon series Fallout, to get this new and different perspective on an apocalypse story. So we're pretty excited about that. And obviously we're going to cover that. And in preparation for that, we'll likely cover season 2 when it comes out. It's supposed to be in December, I believe, is when season 2 of Fallout is supposed to premiere. But until that happens, we're gonna cover the crap out of season 1.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, I enjoyed it when it came out. Of course, again, this is one of those things where I've played the video game or several of the video games that are in the Fallout universe, and of course you have not. So we're going to get that kind of difference, of looking at it. But yeah, I thought the show was great. It was really fun. It looked amazing. So yeah, it's going to be really. I'm really looking forward to delving into the world of Fallout.
Me too. I'm pretty excited about it. Steve suggested it, and I was like, well, let me watch episode 1 and we'll see. And then I watched half of it like one night, and I blazed through the rest of it the next day. And I was like, okay, so we're covering this.
Literally, she texted me and went, okie dokie.
So we're pretty excited about it, and looking forward to covering that for you. It's going to be an interesting show to cover, interesting take on a post-apocalyptic kind of tale, and we think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, that being said, if it's one of those shows that you have been sort of setting aside, saying, oh, I've heard people talk about how great it is, but I haven't gotten there to it yet, then get to it. Now you get some time. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, now's your chance to go through really, really great episodes. They move really fast. And it's exactly what you want. It's one of those shows where like you get to the end of episode 3 and you're like, oh, I have to see what happens next. So do that if you haven't watched it yet. And if you have watched it, maybe, if you're that kind of person that needs to do a little bit of a rewatch to get familiar again, start now. Start your little rewatch now. And like I said, we're going to throw some social media out there so that you guys will get some reminders. But if you want to get started now, go for it. Or if you want to go week to week with us and just watch it week by week, then you can do that as well. But we're excited either way to bring this to you in the coming weeks.
You bet, man. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Anything else we should chat about before we wrap it up?
Just that this weekend is the release of 28 Years Later. So,
yes,
chance to go see your, track sprinting infected people, roaming England. So, we're making plans right now, and I think we've got a basic plan to see it this weekend, which is going to be really fun. And again, I'm kind of doing right now. I'm doing the kind of please don't suck, please don't suck, please don't suck, please don't suck kind of chant about it, because the first one was great. The second one was pretty good. I liked it. It wasn't as good as the first one, and now there comes a third one, and I'm very optimistic, but there's always that worry of, oh, what if it's really bad? But at this point, fingers crossed, toes crossed, and I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah, I am too, and I think in the very least, I'm sort of like I'm suspending all of my my expectations for it, and I'm just gonna enjoy the fact that a horror movie, an apocalyptic, I wouldn't call it zombie, but like
it's an infected movie.
An infected movie, all on the big screen during summer blockbuster time is pretty awesome.
It's gonna be great.
So,
it's gonna be great.
Just being able to watch something like that on the big screen will be a lot of fun. So I'm gonna try and revel in that. I think that'll be, in the very least, that'll make it a fun time.
Oh yeah, in the very least, we're gonna eat popcorn and be able to sit in the movie theater, and then we'll be able to hang out and discuss it afterwards. Yeah, it's gonna be great. So yeah, I don't get me wrong, I'm totally looking forward to the experience. I'm just really hoping it's a good movie too.
I agree. All right. Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us this week. We look forward to chatting with you next week about Dead City's season finale. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they just don't work.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
I hear you munching on something.
Yeah, I got Goldfish crackers. I gotta put those away. I've been sort of like eating them absentmindedly, so now I can't eat them absentmindedly because I have to,
talk.